Never be fair, you say? How intriguing. What's up, guys? That guy with a reaction here. Fun fact, I do Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. So another fun fact, here we are to do a reaction to Jaded's Why Gojo vs. Sukuna's rematch will never be fair. And now notably, this is literally being recorded maybe 5 minutes. I took a sip. I took a sip of water. I checked some things on my cellular device. And I was gonna edit the previous video, but I was like, nah, we're just gonna record straight for today, and then I'll do a bunch of editing and exporting later. But like, bada bing, bada boom. Here we are. Like I said at the end of the last video, I'm gonna be reviewing this one, and it was made a month after. I literally had to listen to the first few seconds because I immediately clicked on the video after I let the last video play out, and they literally said a month ago. So like, this was a video made in response to the last one. It's 20 minutes long. I already went super duper in depth to why I think Sukuna would win a rematch. I went through all of the last video to explain why I think their reasoning wasn't very good, why Sukuna would lose a rematch. So I won't go too deep in depth to it there. I'm only gonna try to double the length of this video if I try. I mean, I'm gonna try not to yap as much. I like quintupled the length of the last video, and my computer's gonna hate me forever for that. But long story short, I'll run it again just in case you don't want to go check out the last video. And obviously the link to Jaded's channel and Six, because I'm assuming he's here again, Six's video will be in the description down below with a link to both of their channels. Go check them out. They're fantastic content creators. I think Jaded mostly covers JJK. And JJK, and I saw an Adventure Time video recently, and there's another video I saw of Jaded's. Fantastic content creator, great editing, great thumbnails. Six, another fantastic content creator, covers a bevy of topics from JJK to Naruto to a bunch of stuff. But I'm assuming this is a response video, but for my thoughts real quick, Sukuna plus Heian Body plus never turning DA off in domain clashes, lasts for 1 more second against Gojo. Gojo never does enough damage to Sukuna to take down his domain. Gojo dies after 5 refreshes. Gojo tries to go for unlimited hollow. Sukuna, just as against Yujo, doesn't let him do that by just being in his face and preventing him from getting the chance off or creating the red or the blue. He can't do that. 3 minutes pass. 3 minutes and 1 second pass. Domain gets destroyed. Bada bing, bada boom. Gojo dies after 5 refreshes. Sukuna wants to use World Slash. Sukuna, while DAing, because we know he can flicker between DA and technique use instantaneously, while DAing, holds Enmiten hand side with lower hands, chants the entire time with his lower belly mouth as he's fighting Gojo with his 2 upper arms and his legs. He gets in close with Gojo. They're exchanging blows. Gojo, who doesn't know about the Binding Vow or how it works, because he died to the first one, which was under the effect of the first Binding Vow, or under effect of the Binding Vow, doesn't know what's happening, gets 2 fingers shoved up against him. Sukuna flickers off DA for an instant, launches out the World Slash, kills Gojo. Like, there are a couple options, and that's all of Gojo's clashing. However, I did give Gojo a win con. He needs to stay far, far away and pepper Gojo with reds and blues and purples. If he just does that, he wins. If he does that, he wins. If he ever tries to go domain for domain with Sukuna, he loses eventually because of DA. And I'm not saying that Sukuna would even lose quickly to being peppered by reds, blues, and purples, but he would lose because he would literally just run out of curse energy first. Good. How long was that? 3 minutes. Let's go in the video.
So about a month ago, I had done a video talking about if Gojo and Sukuna rematch. After their fight, they decided to...
But do you see how peak the editing is on? Like, that's the thing. Jada has such fantastically edited videos. It's on a 6, man. Like, and I'm not sure if I know 6 has an editor. I'm not sure if Jada has an editor, but like, I need to see a stat. I need to see learn Paul. I need to learn, like, the first 6 seconds is better edited than any video I've ever made. Actually just coded. Was it?
But you might not have realized that it was 6 because his mic sounded like it got hit by the World Slash. But we had done a video talking about what would happen if Gojo and Sukuna had another fight. But during this rematch, we had given Sukuna his true form, and obviously both of them have the knowledge of their previous fight. When doing this video, nearly immediately, me and Six had come to the realization that it wasn't really formulated and structured as best as it could have been, and it really does play out.
Okay, let's read some of these comments. Let me see. Yeah, okay, none of them. Y'all are saying that Gojo is undisputably better than Sukuna in hand-to-hand, but in the fight they had, he literally couldn't fight back without halting the adaptation. Every time he chose to halt the adaptation, the fight was basically even or Sukuna's favorite. Yep, I agree. Y'all are taking into account that Sukuna can use Hollow Worker Basket constantly or Domain Amp constantly, which means Infinity is not a problem hand-to-hand in combat. Specifically Domain Amp, not Hollow Worker Basket, because then you'd have to hold Hollow Worker Basket, but yeah, Domain Amp constantly, free hands, yep. I think 6 overlooks the fact that Sukuna wouldn't just interrupt Gojo if he tried to purple in a clash. Even when he hits Sukuna with red, it required setup. He wouldn't be able to get it off normally. Sukuna mentions in 2Cs2 that Gojo didn't use purple until the end because you'd have to do it discreetly. Otherwise, Sukuna would counter it. Also, be an opportunity for Sukuna to chain use World Slash Slipia. Yeah, so like, they made the exact same arguments I did. So let's see. So this is a counter video. Maybe I should have just rated this video alone, but I did want to get both of them since they were there. And the person who requested the first video did want me to react to both. So here we are. Let's see.
that way in the comments, with tons of people just mentioning things that kind of very obvious that nobody watched more than halfway through the video. And whether that be because of what we were saying or the fact that Six's mic sounds like it got hit by the world slash, regardless, it's...
I wish he had said purple because the comment said purple and then he just used purple clip. I think he used a purple clip the first time too. But interesting. So does it, let's see.
Pretty obvious that we should do a part 2. With me, I have my good friend Six, and his mic is definitely normal this time.
You're gonna keep bringing that up?
We're gonna be talking about...
It's Six is hilarious too, dog. Man, what? Okay. I need to get some sort of clout, dog. I would love to collab with either of these guys. I don't know. I gotta reach out. Maybe a little 18K subscriber band can reach out to the heavens, dog. Because I'd love to collab with one of these two. Let's see. Or even both. Those would be fun. Let's see.
What if Gojo and Sukuna had a rematch? Same conditions as the last video. You can go watch it. Tons of context around this fight is pretty much left up into the air. And
yo, what is that from? I know that music. Is that from Kirby? No. What is that from? I know that music in the back of my head. Yo, that's like a shiver down my spine. What's that music? What's that from? I think that may be from Kirby. I think that is from Kirby. Yo, that's your banger music choice. Let's see.
After all, we're not Gojo or Sukuna, so there's no real way of knowing without asking them directly, which is only possible thanks to Polybuzz.
Whoa, we ain't doing that. I mean, get your money up. Not on my video. I ain't sponsored. If you want to sponsor your boy, hit my line, but not on my video. Let's see.
Sukuna's world cutting slash. Now, there was one thing I said in that video regarding Gojo dodging the world cutting slash, and there are some people who have just completely misinterpreted what I said. Now, when I say that Gojo can evade the world cutting slash, I don't mean that he's gonna limbo under it and just kind of crawl away from the slash as it's in midair. There's a lot of ways that Gojo can aim dodge and get out of the way before the slash is even fired. Now, just to start off, the world cutting slash is actually just a normal dismantle, but obviously with a broadened target.
And that's the main reason why I think Gojo wouldn't know. Okay, cause I don't want to go too in depth into it. I'm gonna let him cook for this. I'm gonna let him cook for this entire point because this video is 28 minutes long. I don't want to be here for another hour. I have so many other videos I need to record today. So let's go.
That's the entire thing. It cuts reality itself by having Sukuna aim the slash in just a different format than he does with his normal dismantles. Now, the only difference between shooting the world slash in this rematch and shooting it in the last fight that he had with Gojo is that now Sukuna has extra conditions because of a binding vow that he had already made up to kill Gojo in the first place. In order to activate the broadened targeted world slash, the same hand sign used from a level in Shrine is required to actually fire off the slash in the
Enma hand. I keep saying the Enma 10, but I think it's just the Enma hand sign. Yes, right.
First place going into this rematch. Now, that already is pretty bad for Sukuna and already gives Gojo a pretty clear window to get out the way, considering that he's going to be able to feel not only the spark of cursed energy, but he's also going to be able to use the normal precog that sorcerers can already do to get out of the way of attacks that they know are incoming, or having something as blatant as a hand sign being pointed at you before you actually...
But see... Well, then again, I'll let him keep going. But the hand sign, it doesn't get pointed at you. He points with another hand. That's thing number one. That's why it's heavily theorized that Megana couldn't even do the world slash. Like, the whole reason Sukuna set up the binding vow that way is one, because he needed to. And two, because Megana can't do it. You need four hands. Because it's presumed, seemingly, at least by every single time we know a confirmed world slash happened. Which is debatable. Some wonder if Maki actually does a world slash or was just a full chain dismantle. I was once heavy on the world slash side. Because it travels, I'm willing to just give that, like, just a full power dismantle. So, like, same thing with the one that hit Yuta. I used to think it was a world slash, but now I just think it was a full chain dismantle. Because Sukuna's output was heavily nerfed. But the reason a lot of people think Megana can't do it is because the conditions say you need to hold the Enma 10 hand sign and point. You need to point while holding it. Obviously, while you could maybe do something like this, but like I think you do need the extra arm to do it. So yeah, Megana probably couldn't even pull it off, but True Body Sukuna can. And this is the idea of he probably just misspoke. I'm not gonna go deep into it, but he said you need to point the Enma 10 hand sign. He'd know because he's pointing a hand sign at him. One, Gojo just doesn't know how it works. Like he says, it's a regular dismantle for all intents and purposes, just with a changed target. Gojo's perception is good, but he wouldn't be able to tell what the changed target is. He'd just be like, "What is that? You meant a domain?" And in fact, if anything, it would unironically, you know what Gojo would probably assume if they're domain clashing when this is happening? Probably just assume, oh, he's about a domain because it's the same. Camera, stop! There we go. But Why do I have to yell? Why do I have to yell in order for you to listen to me, camera? But they probably see this. If they're not domain clashing, he's gonna see this and be like, oh, domain, and then Sukuna's gonna be forced to domain, which he would because he already has a hand sign out. But if they're in a domain doing this, then Gojo's probably just gonna assume he's reinforcing the domain or something, or changing his conditions. He would not be ready for World Slash because Gojo wouldn't know. He doesn't know about the Binding Vow. Heck, our casting crew didn't even really know about the Binding Vow. They just assumed. So like, why would Gojo know in a rematch? So I don't think he'd be prepared for a World Slash, considering. In fact, I think Gojo would be extra on edge because he just doesn't know how the World Slash happened. He probably assume every single dismantle is a World Slash, which should be a mistake in of itself. Let's see.
Fire off an attack is a pretty clear indication for anybody. The entire point of the Binding Vow, right? Because obviously Binding Vows are equivalent exchanges. This is a pretty big negative to Sukuna, and that's why the trade-off is so massive. If this wasn't completely detrimental to Sukuna's arsenal, then he wouldn't have gotten away with doing something so high rewarding. Sukuna gets this massive advantage and then in return receives this massive disadvantage. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible that Sukuna will be able to fire off a World Slash. Like, I don't think Gojo is just gonna run up to him and just decapitate him the second he attempts it, but at the very least, it gives Gojo a pretty clear window to at least get out the way and attempt to, at bare minimum, aim dodge the potential world-cutting slash.
And I do agree with that. Ultimately, it's funny. Despite dismantle being a ranged technique, one thing I will rarely give anyone in this argument is the idea that Sukuna cannot, at least because Gojo's going to be on edge. That's the big thing about this rematch that admittedly wasn't addressed much in this video, but I'm assuming they're going to address here. Gojo's going to be on edge the entire time because he has no idea what happened. In fact, realistically, the cast and crew had no idea what happened. We as readers know how World Slash works, but like the cast and crew is just going on the bet that he probably needs to do something hand sign related, maybe, I don't know. So like they went with that. But Gojo would have no clue how he died. He would know, well, obviously he know it was a dismantle, but he'd be like, how did he do that? Was that a Binding Vow? Was that not a Binding Vow? And considering how intelligent Gojo is, he'd probably be like, if it was a Binding Vow, I may be good, but I have no idea how he can do that thing. I did not know he could do that. So he's probably going to be on super edge the entire time. So he probably would be lunging for any hand sign Sukuna goes to make, but Sukuna still has 2 more arms. Remember, literally every single time Sukuna does the World Slash later on, he lets the lower hands do it. And if Gojo is lunging in horrified because he's about to open domain or he's about to launch something at me, then Sukuna still does have the upper 2 hands to combat Gojo with. And as long as DA is up while Sukuna's prepping the World Slash, Gojo wouldn't be able to do much. Alright, but let's see.
So if you think that Gojo can outright just dodge the slash as it's traveling midair, that's cool.
All that. But the reason I say all this, if Sukuna's out of range, World Slash isn't a good option because Gojo's going to be mad paranoid. He's going to see Sukuna point and he's going to be like, and he's going to move. Like, he may, because since Gojo was sliced in half, I saw a lot of people, typically in this argument, will be like, oh, Gojo will either go up or go down. He'll either burrow into the ground real quickly, or like drop down to the ground, or he'll fly straight up. I could see Gojo straight, like clapping his hands and just going to the opposite side of Sukuna. So they're being like, no, I'm not dealing with this at all, because he would have no idea what angle it's coming at. Unless you think he could see the slash, which is possible, but like, if he can see the slash, he's dodging it, like people say, either going up, going down, left or right, depending on how it's angled. But I can see Gojo straight, like warping out of the way. The only way I see Sukuna pulling off any sort of World Slash and actually being effective, outside of like he's used World Slash in a barrier, and then it destroys Gojo's barrier by like splitting it directly in half, and then allowing the Malevolent Tread on the outside to come in and just tear it apart. It would literally be Sukuna being as sneaky as possible. Like we're not even as sneaky as possible, just using the fact that Gojo doesn't know what's happening. Because he wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a regular dismantle and a World Slash. He would literally be like in the midst of hand-to-hand using DA, fighting Gojo off with his 2 upper hands, and then fighting Gojo off with his legs. It's all soaked in DA, holding the Enma hand sign, chanting with his lower belly mouth, letting Gojo think, okay, he's charging for regular slash. And we know that Sukuna can build up and or flicker between technique use and non-technique use through DA. We see him do this with Maharaga. He can do it. So does Higuruma. And if Higuruma can do it, so can Sukuna. So literally, I could see them clashing in close range, and then Sukuna literally, as he's like, let's say he blocks a punch, he goes down, and because we've seen him do this while he was Megano, while he had 2 less arms, but still, he's only gonna have 2 arms in this scenario. He goes down, he goes in for like a punch or a tap or a point, but instead of what would be like a closed fist, he goes out like this, or he goes out like this, and then lets off the slash. Because notably, Sukuna does not have to say dismantle. That's one of the conditions he actually doesn't have to meet. He just says it all the time anyway. He doesn't have, and he could say dismantle with his lower mouth or with his top mouth. And then Gojo thinking, okay, I'm not sure what this is. He may be able to react in time to try and dodge at like literally point blank range, but he may get cut anyway. So like there are still ways for Sukuna to get the world cutting slash off, but it has to be like a giga close range thing. I don't think Sukuna is getting off any sort of long range world slash. Gojo's gonna be way too paranoid. He knows those things can kill him now, so like he's not gonna mess with that. But a close range one, actually a little bit eeky sneaky, because Gojo doesn't actually know how the bounty mount works. Yeah, it could work, but let's see.
But in my interpretation, at bare minimum, you pretty much have to agree that there is going to be that window where Gojo can potentially dodge, and we can't just say that it's world slash GG.
So another comment that was left basically in reference to Gojo dodging the world slash was that Sukuna could simply use the net of dismantles that he used.
That I disagree with. I don't think he can do that. He's never shown that. And notably, once again, the reason why I've gone back on both the slash that Yuta and Yuta gets hit with and Maki dodges, the reason I went back on those being world slashes is because I think world slash doesn't travel, which may make it worse for Gojo. That's the thing. It's a weird assumption because we don't see the world slash Gojo's actually hit with. So maybe it travels, but like the one world slash for sure that Kashimo was hit with, it literally appears. It skipped. It's weird. It looks weird, but in the manga, we know it's a world slash because Kashimo recognizes it as a world slash. It literally skips. It's a big blade that's like lodged in the ground and leaves a hole in the ground. But it skips space. It goes and immediately appears and slashes Kashimo up. That's what this altered hand is right here. So like, if it doesn't travel, then maybe he could actually use it and just spawn it on Gojo. Possible. But I don't think these are world slashes. One, because we don't see Sukuna do the hand signs or chant for it. And two, because they travel. They just look like a typical dismantle net, which wouldn't do anything to Gojo. So I disagree with this. They got me. I disagree with this. Let's go.
To kill Kashimo at the end. This is not a world slash. Sukuna, in order to do the world slash, has to do all the things that Jaded just mentioned before he can even launch one slash. So having a net of dismantles all being the world slash simply makes no sense. He has to chant, do the hand sign, and aim the one slash all before he can even launch one.
Just to add on to what Six...
I do agree. I don't think it's possible for a net of world slashes. I think at most, if you go with Jaded's interpretation that you need to point the end to hand sign, which I think is just wrong. That's just literally it's wrong. Look at this. Look at this. And that's why I think Sukuna can either go like this or go like this if he wants to use like a world slash. But like, look at this. He's not pointing the end hand sign. He's pointing his extra hand. So I think, yeah, I'm not saying Jay's probably not wrong. He probably just misspoke. These things happen. Do you know how many times I misspeak in my own scripted videos? I was listening to the Dabi rewrite and I literally said the wrong name. I was like, thank the heavens, no one caught that in the comments. Because that was just wrong. So like, that was probably just a misspeak. But yeah, like, look at this. He needs to do this and hold one. So if he needs 3 hands to do it. So ultimately, I think it's literally impossible for him to fire more than one world slash at a time. But once again, look at what I mean here. Look at how this slash doesn't even travel. But if they pan, you'll literally see the slash just appears here and puts a hole in the ground. So like, maybe world slash doesn't travel? I don't know. Let's see.
Just said, Sukuna does every prerequisite in the book basically before firing off that world cutting slash.
But see, look at that. Like, but then again, it has motion lines on it, which is why I've always been confused. So like, did it show up out of the ground? Was it like travel above the ground and then like dig into it? I have no idea. There's a joke I want to make, but I won't. But like, I have no idea how this worked. But this is the one thing that makes me question, do world cutting slashes actually travel? Do they? I don't know. But notably, they aren't just dismantles. So like, maybe they still do travel. This one's just weird. I don't know.
We see against Kashimo, and it isn't in a grid pattern. And, you know, you would typically think that if Sukuna's gonna shoot what would be, you know, just a better world-cutting slash, then there would be that grid formation. But it seems like even when Sukuna does the most of what he can do to amplify the power of this cut, it doesn't ever...
Well, not even amplify the power of the cut. It's just to make the cut exist, right? Like he can't, like there is no like weaker version of cutting space. He needs to do this to cut space. Let's see.
Seem to be in a grid-like formation. So that just overall makes that whole idea completely inconsistent. If anything, it's just gonna be, you know, your normal world-cutting slash, which is still powerful, but for reasons that we've already gone over, not super relevant. There's one comment in particular that managed to rack up literally a couple...
Let's see. I think 6 overlooks the fact that Sukuna wouldn't it just interrupt go if try to purple in a clash, even if he had Sukuna with red. Okay, so yeah, this is coming from earlier.
100 likes, but it's talking more about 6 specifically, so I'm gonna let 6 cover that specific point.
So the comments basically saying how I overlooked the fact that Sukuna wouldn't just interrupt Gojo if he tried to do purple within the domain clash, because even when he did hit Sukuna with red, it required a ton of setup. And Sukuna mentioned in 262 that Gojo didn't use purple until the end because he knew that he would have to use it discreetly, otherwise Sukuna would simply counter it. But this kind of misses the mark, especially with this talking about what Sukuna says about Gojo in 262. What Sukuna says about Gojo in 262 is that he doesn't know how long Kenjaku.
But no, see, 6. Those are 2 separate statements. Those are 2 separate statements. You know why I know those are 2 separate statements? Because in one of these, he's talking about Gojo. The other, he's talking about Yuta. I mean, like, I see what you're doing. It's kind of slick, but it's different here. Very specifically, he's critiquing Yuta on his use of purple by referencing how Gojo had to go out of the way. As he says, does he not understand why Satoru Gojo ended up having to use purple in that way? I can't allow him an opening to charge up for purple. And then we cut away from this statement. This statement is made, completed, and then in the statement that 6 references, he cuts to a different, like, notably, you can even see how Jaded presents it here, or how Jaded's editor, I'm not sure which one it is, but he cuts away. He starts talking about something completely different. What is the duration of copy? Can he maintain that body after Kenjaku's curse technique finishes? Could it be that Akotsu isn't thinking past this fight? He completely changes modems. The idea of I need to interrupt Hollow Purple and what is up with Yuta in Gojo's body are 2 different thoughts. So using this idea to kind of knock away the idea that Sukuna could interrupt a purple, not the biggest fan of it, but let's see how 6 goes. Maybe he's going to make it better.
His technique is going to last on Yuta. And if Yuta has this 5-minute time limit or his timer's going to run out soon, then he might just end up using Hollow Purple Unlimited anyway in order to just end the fight that way. Then Yuta starts using purple the normal way, and Sukuna's like, oh, well, he just doesn't understand. You can't use purple that way against me. That's why Gojo had to use it in the roundabout way, because I won't give you a single opening to use that move. Yeah, Gojo can't do purple in the normal way because it requires significant charge up, but this has nothing to do with unlimited purple, and Sukuna actually has no answer to unlimited purple.
But that's still wrong. And well, it's not wrong. It comes down to interpretation, right? And that's what all this is, right? It's a game of interpretation. But ultimately, red is not an instantaneous spawn thing, right? It's not an instantaneous spawn thing. It is something that Gojo needs to charge up. It has twice the output of blue, takes twice the curse energy of blue, all that. So
when he thinks that Yuta's going to do it, there's like a panel where you can see Sukuna's eyes widen as he's realizing, hey, he might be able to do it. And he just says he knows what Yuta's next move will be. But he only counters the normal purple whenever Yuta starts trying to do it. Sukuna doesn't have an answer for the unlimited purple. He's just saying that he knows that's what Yuta's going to do. And that's how Gojo's going to have to use the technique on him if they do the rematch. So if Gojo did use red and blue inside the domain in order to cause
let me keep cooking
unlimited purple, there shouldn't be any way for Sukuna to counter it outside of using domain amplification, obviously, to negate the damage or lessen it to some extent.
Some people have brought up the point when we mentioned that.
Okay, so I think, unironically, I think the counter that Gojo will experience when he tries to do unlimited hollow is the same counter that Yuta experienced when he tried to do regular hollow, aka getting punched in the face. Like that is the counter. I mean, like, obviously Gojo can, like, try and dodge, but, like, he's gonna be focused on chanting at least to make sure the red is somewhere near full output. Or at least the second, like, that's the big issue is, right? Once Sukuna has DA on 24/7, he just doesn't turn it off, right? He's not gonna get out of Gojo's face. He's just gonna keep punching Gojo in the face. And obviously, you know, like, well, Gojo's gonna fight back, right? But yeah, while Gojo's fighting back, he can't form a red. He can probably instantaneously spawn blues, as long as Sukuna's, like, gives him half a second. I believe Gojo could point out and spawn blues. But the issue is, the blues aren't gonna do anything because of DA. They aren't gonna drag Sukuna away, they aren't gonna push Sukuna back, they're not gonna do anything. If anything, Gojo needs to use blue on himself to try and get away, but Sukuna's just gonna keep running after him, right? And Gojo, no matter how long you think it is, red's not instantaneous. So as long as Sukuna stays in Gojo's face with DA on, unlimited hollow's not happening. That's my thing. I don't like 6 is correct. Sukuna's eyes widened when he realized what Goto was about to do. And then Goto very specifically could not just do an unlimited hollow or any type of purple. He had to then use cursed speech in order to hold Sukuna in place in order to get off purple at all. Gojo doesn't have something like that. The only way he could do it is by trying to take himself away from Sukuna in the midst of the domain scenario, which will just give time for Sukuna to world slash, to either interact with purple, which would be really cool looking, and or just rush Gojo down and try and punch him in the face. And notably, he can rush Gojo down as he's prepping world slash. Because remember, the entire time they're boxing in domain, Sukuna can be holding the Enma hand sign, have a hand out, or just be running with his hands directed like this, and chanting, meeting all the conditions for world slash. So the second Gojo tries to retreat, as long as they're in a confined domain space, world slash is on prep at any moment, while DA is always on, and Gojo's keep getting punched in the face to make sure he can't do red. I think that's the counter, because even unlimited hollow is not instant. We see this specifically when Gojo has to draw them together. He doesn't just, he fires the red, but then he needs to redirect them into each other. He doesn't always, he's never, at least from what I remember, he never just, and then boom, unlimited hollow. It still takes time, it still takes chance. It'll take enough time that Sukuna, who is as fast as Gojo, they are relative, to be able to catch up to Gojo and stop it. Or at least hinder it. And of course, like it says, DA to soften it. Considering every single other purple that Sukuna's tanked, especially Heian Body Sukuna tanking a point blank, like literally, Yuta was right in his face, point blank, hollow purple, and he took that with no DA. I'm assuming with DA he could probably take a purple and be just fine. But not just fine, but he would take way less damage, and I don't think his domain would break. But that's me.
Gojo might try using the unlimited purple within their next domain expansion in the rematch. A lot of people brought up the idea that we were just kind of plugging our controller into Gojo's butts when saying that type of thing, but to make the argument that Sukuna has this, which in theory should be possible, counter to unlimited hollow purple is pretty much just as much plugging in your controller.
And I agree, right? Ultimately, that's the whole thing about Versus Battles. It is the plug. But then, at least, I'm not sure what these comments were saying. I didn't actually look through the comments. I just started recording my own video again. But to try and align with what the comments are saying, if we're gonna be plugging things up for one character, we're gonna plug in for another, right? And notably, it would be we try to plug in within the bounds and limits of the characters, right? It's why the win con I offered, and they pseudo offered last video, the idea of Gojo just staying away out of domain and just ha. It's something that can happen, but something that won't likely happen in character, which is why they didn't put too much emphasis on it. But something like Unlimited Hollow is something that Gojo would try again in character. Just like stopping Unlimited Hollow is something that Sukuna would try in character, as we see him do against Yuja. So like, we're sticking with, we're shoving controllers up, right? We're already doing a what if. We're shoving controllers up, but we're trying to at least keep the characters in character. And the in-character case, I don't think Sukuna lets a Hollow Purple go off. But they don't. So, if that being the case, I'll see if they get other win con for Gojo other than the unlimited purple, right? Because I'm assuming they're going to be like, fine, you may still disagree with us. Here's another way that Gojo could win. So let's see.
To Sukuna, as Gojo making the hollow purple in general in this format. But if anything, I think the hollow purple is probably the more likely option out of the two because, well, first of all, Gojo and Sukuna, IQ-wise, they shouldn't be too far off, at least in a combative perspective. Sukuna's obviously more knowledgeable in a Jujutsu sense, but when it comes to combat IQ, they should be around the same level just judging by their matchup, right? Keep in mind, Gojo has outsmarted Sukuna before multiple times throughout their fight, but that's besides the point. If Sukuna is smart,
and that is true. Ultimately, Gojo and Sukuna are definitely relative in battle IQ, and notably, Gojo does have ways to surprise Sukuna, but it's the same way that Sukuna still has ways to surprise Gojo. Just if you want to take every single time one of them was caught off guard by each other, Gojo was caught off guard by the fact that Sukuna could amplify within a domain. Gojo was caught off guard by the fact that Sukuna could use World Slash. Gojo was caught off guard by the fact that Sukuna could like do half the things he was able to do that battle. So if we're just going by them being relative, yeah. But because they're relative, they also, how do I put this? They also know the conditions for each other's ults. Except Gojo doesn't actually know the conditions for World Slash. He doesn't. He would have no clue about that, even in a rematch. He would have no idea how it happened, and he'd just be paranoid about it not happening again, right? So we then run into the issue of, okay, they're comparable. Camera, work with me. Camera, work with me. They're comparable, but Sukuna still has more unknowns that Gojo has to worry about way more, and everything that Gojo has is revealed to Sukuna. Sukuna would be developing or have a counter for everything. And notably, half of Gojo's abilities getting counter is literally just keeping DA on and punching him in the face. That's it. What are Gojo's counters to Sukuna? I don't know, stall him out and run away while peppering him. That's about it. Ultimately, one has an easy all-access answer that shuts down everything that Gojo does, or at least, if not flat out shuts it down in the case of probably like Blues at a full output DA, at least softens it to the point where it's basically nothing with Sukuna's healing factor, and, or, I don't know, gets it really, really close to being basically nothing, such as Reds, and possibly even Purple. Because considering Gojo will never have time to get off Purple because he's getting punched in the face. We'll see.
Enough to figure that Yuta might try using an unlimited hollow purple. If Sukuna is smart enough to figure that this is something that Gojo might attempt, or at least somebody like Yuta with a literal Gojo style build might attempt, then it isn't even really too far out of the realm of possibility if you do think that in a combat IQ perspective that they're around the same level. If Sukuna figured that this is something that a Gojo type player might do, that this is something that Gojo himself also might attempt.
This comment also mentioned that while Gojo's doing this purple in the roundabout way, the unlimited purple, there would be an opportunity for Sukuna to chant and use the world cutting slash and still be able to use his hands to stop Gojo or even restrain him to get a guaranteed kill with it. But the thing is, Sukuna has to aim the world cutting slash with at least one hand. So you're basically saying that Sukuna would be able to restrain Gojo with one hand while he charges with the other, chants or aims his other hand in order to use the slash on Gojo. Because he can't restrain Gojo with his two other hands, he literally has to use three in order to launch the world cutting slash.
And I agree. That's why I don't think, like, unless you think Sukuna grabs onto Gojo, like it would literally, I see what that commenter's thinking of, right? They're probably thinking of Gojo's going to charge purple, right? He's trying to bring the two together. Sukuna lunges in, chanting with the lower belly mouth, holding the M10 hand sign, grabs Gojo, pulls him in close, and just like straight jabs his fingers into Gojo's chest so he can't move, and does it. But that's way too high risk. Ultimately, that's why I think if a world slash is going to come out, it has to be sneaky and mid-combat. It has to be, they're fighting with DA, or Sukuna's fighting with DA to get through Infinity. They're bobbing and weaving and moving and jiving and grieving. Sukuna's using his upper two arms in normal combat, right? Normal combat. And then randomly, as a hand gets pointed, then a world slash comes out. It can't be telegraphed at all. Because if it's telegraphed, Gojo's dodging it. He's probably, like I said earlier, Gojo's way too big. He's not going to risk it. So ultimately, it would come down to how sneaky can Sukuna be about it. Just like the original one was a sneak, how can he sneakily aim? Because the aim doesn't have to be perfect. He needs to direct it with his hand. Whether it be like this or like this. He does it like this against Higuruma, he does like this against Kashimo. So this is just a chopping motion. If I'm in the middle of fighting somebody, and very specifically, I don't know what they're about to do. I just hear them chanting over and over again. And I literally am in close range because they're not letting me breathe. And suddenly, I get a slash to my shoulder, like a slash across my chest. But then midway through the slash, boom, I get diced in half. I'm not going to do anything about that. But restraining Gojo, I don't think that's it. That's why I think they need to be mid-combat. So I like them. I do disagree with that commenter. I don't think it could be like a restraint thing into it. Because Gojo's not getting restrained with just one hand. I think Sukuna is physically stronger than Gojo. I think he has a better base build. Heck, Geto has better grip strength than Gojo. But I think Gojo would have well, then again, if he's using DA. But in order to activate, DA is going to be off for even half a second. And with half a second of prep time, I could see Gojo literally reacting like, and at least weaving a little bit. Let's see.
So no, Sukuna can't do this. It's not an opportunity for Sukuna to chant. Even if he did start chanting, Gojo launches the blue and the red in the sky. He can still use blue and red normally. They're just colliding up there. So if Sukuna did say turn off amplification or something, that would be another opening for Gojo, not an opening for Sukuna.
Well, here's the thing. We're going to the whole controller idea. Give me one singular reason why Sukuna isn't chanting 24/7. Give me one singular reason why Sukuna isn't holding Enma 10 or Enma. I keep saying Enma 10. Where did I get Enma 10 from? Keeps holding Enma 24/7. He has no reason not to. And as it's pointed out specifically, Sukuna is more than capable of flickering DA on and off in intervals so fast that Gojo can't really do anything about it. Just like Higuruma was able to flicker it on just enough that it softened techniques. At the same time, he was able to use World Slash. We see Sukuna flicker on DA just enough, but Mahoraga never gets desummoned. So a technique can always be on prep. It can always be loading. It can always be there. And then Sukuna, just for because that's the thing. It's the difference of It's the difference of levels of prep time, right? Either Sukuna is able to consistently have his prepped. I keep running a finger over my belly as if I have him out there. But Sukuna consistently is prepping it. He's consistently chanting. There's no reason to ever not chant. Chanting would buff Malevolent Shrine. Chanting would buff any slashes that he's doing. Chanting may even buff DA for all we know. Once again, I don't know about that. But that's the thing that could be happening. So he's never going to stop chanting. He has a second mouth to forever chant, which he would be doing against Gojo since he's trying to kill him this time. At any moment, a World Slash pops out. As we've already agreed to, World Slash is just a dismantle. So at any point, World Slash comes out in an instant because he doesn't need to say dismantle. There is nothing like that. It's only the pointing, which he could very easily do in subtle ways. Sure, pointing sounds like a heavy restriction, but the real restriction is the chance, which he can overcome with his belly mount, and the Edmonton hand sign, which he can overcome with the second hands. So World Slash is something that can come out like that. Unlimited Hollow, it at least takes whatever Red's charge up time is. I agree, blue can pop out instantaneously. Gojo really went like this, and then there were 8 blues. So like, blues can just be set all up over the place, and then Gojo can try and aim and launch one, but Reds always originate from Gojo, and he needs to charge them up. Sukuna's in his face, being slick with it, being sly, and consistently chanting and holding the hand sign, World Slash can come out at literally any second. The instant Sukuna flickers off DA, World Slash. And as we've seen, Gojo cannot always react to that. So, I think World Slash is easier to pull out than Hollow Purple. Any version of it. That's me though. Let's see how they. But notably, one thing they have yet to address is like the 24/7 DA. I want to see how they address that. Let's see.
If Sukuna specifically starts chanting for the World Slash, though, if he just uses normal domain amplification or something like that, then obviously that's going to be the best way to defend against it. I'm just saying it's not an opportunity for Sukuna to chant.
Unless, but the thing is, and this goes to the idea of a controller of the butt. But notably, in Sukuna's true form introduction, one of the narrator panels I think literally says he can consistently chant with his lower belly mouth, as if that's something he's done before. So that almost is at least from how the narrator implies it, that's even a thing Sukuna does in character. And notably, that would be like the ultimate man. Like what do you do about that other than ripping Sukuna's tongue out? What do you do about the fact that he's just able to consistently chant over and over and over and over and over again with no break? Because if it's just the chant in this, pointing is easy. You can point in 15 different ways. Point like this. 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 Point like... And obviously, this will be noticeable. Gojo will be like, okay, he's going to launch a dismantle at me. Maybe it's the World Slash 1. Dodge. Pointing like this? Still pretty obvious. Pointing like this? That's a weave chop. Who knows? Sukuna could have been trying to take Gojo's neck off. Just a quick motion, and then bada bing bada boom, World Slash comes out. Yeah, whatever.
So another couple comments we got were actually pretty funny when I read them, but they were...
Well, I came expecting a bias analysis, and I got a bias analysis. You guys make Sukuna an idiot. Well, no. They didn't make Sukuna an idiot, because notably, they didn't really address too much of how... They didn't really... hold on. I need to do something real quick. But let me talk as I do. Let me see something. Too late for that. They didn't really address Sukuna's battle IQ all too much. Essentially, they were just going over the idea that here's all win cons that Gojo has, and Sukuna doesn't have many win cons in counter to this, because they didn't really put too much emphasis on the timer, and they essentially just said World Slash couldn't happen. So they're just like, he doesn't have win cons. Hold on. Hold on. There we go. All right. Well, no, I don't think they made Sukuna stupid last video. They just didn't really acknowledge what Sukuna could do in counter, right? Like, they didn't really address a 24/7 DA. They didn't really address Sukuna being able to chant the whole time, and it being something he possibly even does in character. They didn't really address any of that. And that's okay. We're shoving controllers up these characters' butts, ultimately. And, like, and notably, there's a reason why, for the longest time, I was even on the Gojo side of things, where, like, yeah, it's just easy. Because it's so easy to think of unlimited hollow spam. the series goes out of its way to highlight that Gojo could do unlimited hollow spam. He could do infinite domain. Like, that's the thing. It's so easy to consider ways for Gojo to win. Meanwhile, you need to, and I think this is it. It's simplicity versus complexity, right? Gojo's win con is simple. Spam unlimited hollow. That's it. He doesn't have to worry about Sukuna adapting anything since Maharaga's gone. And Sukuna takes damage from purples. It's as simple as that. And Gojo has unlimited purples. Just boom, 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 unlimited, over. Like, he can just do that. It's not complicated. Meanwhile, the way that Sukuna gets to win is Sukuna needs to bait Gojo into a domain clash, which a smarter Gojo wouldn't do. That's the big thing. A smart Gojo would not domain clash with Sukuna. At least, okay, if Gojo was shoving the controller up and trying to make optimal, he's not domain clashing, because he knows ultimately that puts himself on a timer. Why put yourself on a timer when you don't need to go on a timer? So, a smart Gojo doesn't domain clash Sukuna. So Sukuna, 1, needs to bait Gojo into domain clashing. 2, needs to turn DA on the entire time. 3, needs to bait Gojo into constantly thinking something could happen by consistently chanting with his lower belly mouth. And 4, either stall out Gojo 5 times in a row, because Gojo will not die instantaneously, and the furnace will never get hot enough unless it's being maintained, and or sneak in a world slash. It's like, that's 5 separate steps for Sukuna to get to a win con. 3 of those steps, which could lead to a win con, aka infinite DA, MS clash, forever, only happen if Gojo decides to stay there for 1, and for 2, if Sukuna does something that would take a while. Meanwhile, unlimited hollow spam is unlimited hollow spam. It's nice and simple. But let's see.
We're basically saying that we made Sukuna an idiot, or bottom line, not as intelligent as he was in his original fight with Gojo. I do kind of get where they're coming from, but not in the sense that we obviously didn't make Sukuna dumber in the rematch.
And Sukuna's an idiot already. I've made this point many times before. Sukuna is kind of stupid. He could have won the entire Shinjuku raid if he actually wanted to. He just didn't because he's an idiot. So like, in character, Sukuna kind of dumb. he did not need the technique amplification either. He fought Gojo in a stupid way too. Gojo even points this out. You're fighting weird, bro. So like, Sukuna, he's kind of stupid in character. But that's me though. That's me. Hey, what can I say? That's me though. I know a lot of people don't like when I call Sukuna stupid. But can't fight fat. No, I'm kidding. Let's see.
Sukuna just blankly thrived off of having information on Gojo's techniques, while Gojo had little to no information about basically anything Sukuna was capable of doing.
And that's true. And the thing is, that's information disadvantage still exists here because Gojo has no idea of the condition of Sukuna's binding vow. And ironically, Sukuna may not even know it was a binding vow. Because he never told anyone that. He explained Maharag's adaptation process and how he stole it. And like Gojo seemingly smiled after that, so like maybe he listened to that. But he doesn't say, oh, BT dubs, I made a specific binding vow that means I have to hold the Enmiten hand side, chant completely, and point at you. No one was ever told that. We were told that by the narrator. Sukuna never mentions that. Let's see.
Besides, obviously being incredibly strong and having slashes and a slash-based curse technique. Gojo didn't know about Sukuna's domain, he didn't know about Fuga, he didn't know about a lot of different things that even potentially we didn't even get to see what advantage those things could hold. He didn't have access to a lot of things that would have definitely helped him in the rematch. Now, Sukuna losing that advantage doesn't make him an idiot by any means, right? The fact
And he still has it.
that he doesn't have the one-up in terms of combat knowledge on Gojo before going into this fight, it doesn't make him an idiot. Sukuna is still just as intuitive and still just as intelligent as he's always been, but being realistic, going into this rematch, it's really not looking too good for Sukuna, especially when you consider stuff like he can process minutes worth of information in literal moments, like we see when he gets captured into the prison realm. Even then, right, Gojo knows a couple of things that are gonna help him gravely in this rematch, and we covered most of them in the last video, but I'll quickly go over some of them. Now, the biggest thing is that Gojo is obviously going to know about the world cutting slash. I mean, even if you don't think that that's Gojo smiling at the end of 236 after Sukuna's literally explaining to Gojo what the world cutting slash even is, Gojo's clearly seen it. We can see by his reaction when he gets to the afterlife, he's grabbing his stomach. It clearly looks like he's at least seen himself being cut by the slash. So, and then even then, his 6 eyes might be able to break it down, but that's an entire debate within itself, and it's not really too important. Gojo knows that he can go in there and just shrink the size of his barrier, so he's not going to go in there and just burn an entire 2 domain expansions like he did last time. And then Gojo also knows that his cursed energy is going to do less damage to himself, and all of these factors are extremely important, but we're going to cover those a little bit later in the video. But overall, the advantage of knowledge in this fight definitely goes to Gojo and not really as much Sukuna.
But I disagree, because it's like, okay, let me explain it like this. I'm fighting somebody. That person knows that at any moment, somehow, I can shoot them with something, right? Like, let's just call it a Kamehameha wave since we're anime based, right? At any moment, a Kamehameha could come out. They have no idea how I do it though, right? Like they have no clue. At least according to them. And then let's go with the idea of a rematch, right? Say I fought this guy before. We were going high diff, and then randomly I Kamehameha'd him. Just out of no, like I just shot him with a Kamehameha, and he lost. And then we rematched like a week later. But it's not like he saw me go into the same. It's not like I said Kamehameha. Like I didn't do none of that. It's just he was standing there 1 minute, he was Kamehameha the next. He has no clue how I Kamehameha him. He just knows that it's there. If anything, that's a mental stack. That's like that makes the matchup even worse for Gojo, because now he knows that the World Cutting Slash exists, but he has no idea how to activate it. If anything, he or no idea how it's activated. He doesn't know that Sukuna set up a binding vow for that. Sukuna didn't tell him that in that monologue. And personally, I do think Gojo was listening the entire time, but like Sukuna didn't tell him that. So Gojo essentially goes into this rematch being like, okay, so he has DA, he has Malevolent Shrine. If I mess up in this clash, I could get timed out. And also he has this. He just has the ability to slash me through infinity. A slash that cuts the world. How does he act? Like that's the thing. That's gonna be in there, right? It's kind of like for my fighting game players out there. It's kind of like seeing your opponent with 3 bars in fighters, and in this very specifically fighters based. But like essentially any time where your opponent has enough for a super, especially an ult, you're sitting there constantly wondering. Like you see it in the bottom right of their screen. And you're like, if I make a mistake here, I could get beamed. The amount of times I've been raw level 3 to losing a match is insane. Insane. But maybe if I didn't know that, then I could go in differently. But I'm always extra paranoid. There are times where I've gone for safe jumps instead of like actual active mix-ups on Trunks on back when 21 wasn't bad. With Android 21 Majin, or heck, even some more basic stuff. Well, Blue Vegeta isn't, or not Blue Vegeta. Just the base Vegeta is basic. But like essentially, there have been times where I've gone in but hesitated on doing a more fancy mix-up because I'm like, I need to safe jump this. Because if I mess up this mix-up, I'm cooked. Because he could do this. And that's the thing. Gojo knows that it's there. He doesn't know how it works, though. He still doesn't know how it works. Just like he doesn't really fully understand open barrier domain. He just doesn't know. And that lack of knowledge is Sukuna's biggest advantage. All Gojo's going to see is Enmaten and think domain. Because that's all that is in Gojo's mind. Domain expansion. Okay, so he's going to do domain. So they're both going to domain. Then he's going to see Sukuna holding domain. He's going to be like, well, okay, he's probably just reinforcing his domain. Maybe that's going to make it stronger. Maybe that's going to do something like this. He's going to see Sukuna chancing. And he's going to be like, okay, I guess this is buffing his domain even more. Maybe I have less than 3 minutes. Like, that's the thing. Gojo does not have a clear pathway to understanding what holding Enmaten and the hand sign means. Or what holding Enmaten or holding Enma and the chanting means. He's just going to think what everyone else thinks. Oh, he's just buffing his technique again. He's not going to realize at any moment when he's in close range or far range with Sukuna, Sukuna could, and then it could literally be something as simple as, and then suddenly there's a world slash coming at him. Gojo wouldn't know that. There still is this massive element of surprise that Sukuna has that Gojo doesn't. So like, I even disagree, because guess what? Sukuna knows Unlimited Hollow and how it functions. He knows everything about red. He knows everything about blue. He knows everything about purple. He knows everything about, maybe not the teleporting, because Gojo doesn't do that too often, but like, he knows everything about everything that Gojo has to offer. Gojo still doesn't understand World Slash. So honestly, I disagree. I think Sukuna still has the information advantage at least. We'll see.
Simply because of the fact that all of the cards that were worth playing, based on the idea that Gojo wouldn't be able to know that Sukuna did no said thing, isn't really applicable in a rematch. Yeah, so overall, I don't think Sukuna's an idiot. Again, he's incredibly smart and probably overall smarter than Gojo, but when it comes to this matchup specifically, it would be very plugging in your controller into Sukuna's butt to suggest that there'd be something that we don't know and that Sukuna currently doesn't know that he would figure out during a rematch. That would just...
But at the same time, there's nothing, like, unfortunately, Gojo is very powerful, very dangerous, very diverse, but everything, he's already shown everything. Gojo's laid all his cards out on the table. Sukuna still has, he has a card he's half laid out. It's, like, I went with the fighting game analogy of your opponent having 3 meter, but, like, as a person who's been playing a whole bunch of Magic recently, there's that unknown. It's like if you know your opponent's deck, but you don't know what their hand is. In fact, that's exactly how it is. Like, there are many times, especially when I'm playing Magic against my homeboy, where I'll know his deck. I'll know his deck to the letter. And I'm like, I could summon my monster right now, but I don't know if he has a counterspell ready. I could lay down this sorcery, but he may be able to immediately negate that. And sometimes these are like game-winning differences. Where like, for example, there was a time where in fact, it was very recent. I was playing my homeboy. I was playing a Dread deck. Very specifically, we were playing Commander. And in my hand from like the second or third turn, I had Raging Stampede. I had it sitting there in my hand. But he was playing a deck that definitely had counterspells in it. And I was like, I could put this down right now and end the game. I could, like, because I had enough monsters. Like, I have a high enough monster. I think I had like an 8/8. I have an 8/8. Everyone will get plus 8/8. Everyone will have trample. He has only 3 monsters on the field. I can do this. But I was hesitant because he had a full hand. The only time I put down Raging Stampede, Stampede, I forget, I think it was Raging Stampede. The only time I put that down is when he had 1 card in his hand and he had burnt all his mana. I was like, he can't do anything about this now. Boom! And I put it down and I won. Gojo knows Sukuna has something in his deck, possibly in his hand. He has the mana for it at all times. He has no idea if it'll come out though, and no idea how it'll come out. It's like he knows of the card, but he doesn't know its conditions for activation, and he doesn't know where it is. So like, that's a pretty big advantage. Meanwhile, Gojo has nothing. What is Gojo gonna pull out? Lime green, teal. I have no idea, but like that's the thing. I don't know. I don't think Gojo there's no information that Gojo has that Sukuna doesn't. Meanwhile, there is information that Sukuna has that Gojo doesn't.
Just be completely unfair.
So there was another comment asking why Gojo didn't sense Sukuna's charge up of cursed energy for the world slash when he originally died from it. But the entire thing with that was Sukuna sort of skipped all the other processes for the world cutting slash whenever he used it against Gojo. And the trade-off for that was that he would have to do all the other things that he does now when he uses the world slash. So before, all he would have to do is use the exact same hand sign for his domain in order to launch the world slash. But the binding valve to just launch it, to just throw it out no matter what, Sukuna basically made the binding valve so that it would be impossible for him to do with his 2-armed form, and then he sort of cheated the system.
Exactly. So they did real. I forget if I mentioned that this video or last video, but yeah, that was like, Sukuna can't even do world slash in his mechana form. He needs hand body. But yeah, that is a big thing. And notably, I think a big thing about what Gojo likely would have saw, especially knowing, because we now know, thanks to the interview, that Gojo's guard was down, right? A big thing that's important to note is that it's just a dismantle. It's a broad and curse technique target. It's not a maximum technique. It's not a domain expansion. It probably doesn't have any different feel from any other dismantle. I mean, it weirdly operates differently, but like outside of that, I don't think the Six Eyes would tell Gojo anything unique. Remember, the Six Eyes couldn't even tell that Kenjaku was actively using a technique in Geto's body. Gojo had to take his knowledge of Geto. He had to listen to his soul to know that Kenjaku, who was actually using a curse technique to pilot a dead body, was that. He was like, okay, you're not Geto. Who are you actually? And Kenjaku was like, oh, well, shoot, look at you, big. So like, the Six Eyes aren't even the best at discerning when a whole other curse technique is in use to pilot a dead body. How on earth were the Six Eyes supposed to tell Gojo, hey, that thing's cutting space and time? Like, how is it supposed to know? It wouldn't know that. And that's why he's probably off guard. He's like, it looks like a regular dismantle. And that's the dangerous thing about it. If Sukuna's chanting all the time and holding the Edmonton hand sign and just waving his arms about, how's Gojo supposed to know? He probably just assumes it's a regular dismantle. He's going to be on edge, though, so he's probably going to dodge it, which is why I think World Slash needs to be used in close range anyway. But let's see.
Whenever he went into his 4-arm form and then he could launch the world slash again against Kashimo. That's why Gojo didn't sense it. You can either interpret it that way or just say that Gojo did sense it and he didn't care to try to dodge it or anything because he's been blocking dismantles the entire fight.
Which is funny because it is so hilarious because he literally only blocked one. And even then, it's weird if he blocked it or if he dodged it. Or like if it bounced off Infinity. Based on how Infinity works, it shouldn't be possible to bounce off, so he leaned back against one and then hit the building behind him. That's about it. Sukuna never actually uses Dismantle too much against Gojo when it's not Benevolent Shrine. And even then, he doesn't use Dismantle against Gojo when it's Benevolent Shrine because it's Cleave.
His Infinity, and it just simply caught him off guard that way.
Yeah, I don't even...
And it did catch him off guard. We know that now for a fact.
to know why Gojo would be thinking that this hypothetical slash would be threatening to him anyways, like Six said. If even Kusakabe can interpret that this is a clear Gojo W just due to the knowledge that they have in the present moment, then Gojo, even if he did see a dismantle coming at him, he might actually just sit there, because what is it even going to do the moment it touches infinity? He doesn't know that it can, you know, rip his barrier in half because it can literally cut space. And even if you did want to take the proximity argument and say that, oh, well, Gojo is going to be so close to Sukuna in a hand-to-hand matchup, so maybe in close range combat, he would be able to pull something off where Gojo can't react because obviously with the shorter distance would require the greater speed. That also is just as nonsensical, because if Gojo, again, has this window to stop the world-cutting slash from ever being activated, he's gonna take it. So if you want to say that Gojo wouldn't be able to react to the slash in close quarters, or Sukuna wouldn't be able to even make the slash to begin with in close quarters, I think that's a very fair way of looking at that argument.
No. Here, I see where they're going, but I disagree, because the conditions for the slash can be met while Sukuna is fighting close quarters. The conditions for unlimited hollow cannot be met while Gojo and Sukuna are fighting close quarters. Remember, this is a big thing. The only fancy condition Sukuna has to meet if he's playing it smart is holding this and chanting with his belly mouth. He has 2 mouths. He has an extra set of arms. He can always be half a second away from a world slash. That's the thing. He's always only half a second away from it activating. He is chanting. His belly is going. It is yapping like crazy. And his hands are like this. As they've already agreed to in the previous video, and I believe in this one, they agree that Sukuna can fight Gojo with 2 hands. It's a feasible thing he can do. Heck, he fought Goda with 3 arms and a nub, or 3 nubs and an arm. So like, he can fight Gojo in close quarters with only 2 hands. And once again, pointing doesn't have to be this, okay, I'm going to extend my arm exactly like this and say this. No, it is simple as, or. We literally see him do it in different ways. He does a backflip into an aura farm on Higuruma, if you think that's a world slash, which I do think. And he does this to Kashimo. So pointing clearly isn't at all specific. It's just aiming it. So they're in the middle of close combat. Sukuna's DA is on. He's chanting. He's building up in his belly. He's holding the M10. Weave. Yeah. And then literally, and really depending on how fast you think Sukuna could do it. Notably, I think Sukuna would have to deactivate DA for half a second before he would to like jab his fingers into Gojo's belly, which would proc infinity. But literally in that instant where he's going for like I don't know if y'all have ever been hit like right beneath your ribcage. Like I've been jabbed right there. It is the most painful thing ever. So it is actually a viable combat thing. The second that goes to happen and he gets caught on infinity, the second Gojo realizes, wait, he's turned dismantle and he's dead. Or in half. He may be able to live it this time if he knows what's happening. But like, he'd be in half because it's that simple. That would count as pointing. The Enmatan hand sign would be reached and he would have chanted. That's why it's so easy, even in hypothetical close quarters. Meanwhile, in close quarters, Gojo literally cannot prepare unlimited hollow. And the thing is, just as, and I'll say this is one thing I failed to mention. He could always have the blues ready. He can maintain simultaneous blues. So like, he would always have the blues ready. It'd be the red. It would be the red. That's the hard thing. If Sukuna's up in his face and Gojo's not running away, the red would be the hard thing to get off because that takes a second to charge up time. Let's see.
Now, there's one line that Six said in that video, and Six blatantly said that it didn't matter for the argument that he was making, and he was literally just gonna let it rock out for the sake of the video. But for some reason, this one comment probably garnered about half of the other comments that you can go to the video and see down below. It's directly in reference to Six saying that he didn't think that true form Sukuna was that big of a difference, at least when it came to stats. Everything else was never really brought up. The fact that he has other arms, he has another.
And that's true. And once again, feel how you feel about that. I come to you as now supposedly one of Sukuna's greatest sloppers. I think it's mostly unquantifiable. I mean, like, it's because I don't think it's linear, right? Like, obviously, even though Sukuna's probably like twice the body weight of Megami, like, what, Megami is barely like 160, soaking wet, and then Sukuna's definitely he's smooth 300. There ain't no way Sukuna's not 300 pounds. 2 extra arms. Like, come on now. He's got to be at least 300. So, like, I don't think it's linear like that. I don't think it's like a 1.5 times multiplier, 2.5 times multiplier. It's unquantifiable. But it's enough that he could last 1 more second. That's always my big thing. I don't care. I don't care if you think it's a 2 times multiplier, 10 times multiplier, and 100 times multiplier. You could think he went Super Saiyan 4 for all I care. As long as you can grant me that he could last 1 more second. Just 1 more second. That's all I need. Just 1 more second in a domain clash. That's all I need. You can keep the rest of the stats. I just need 1 second of your time.
Their mouth, he can chant better, he can do incantations better overall. That's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about just in terms of speed and raw strength, and not in any way that has anything to do with the quality of his body, of having, like, you know, 2 arms. Just the fact that him having more muscle should not make a difference overall, and that is something that we didn't explain in the video, but I'll go over it right now. The first thing to really think back to when we're talking about physical stats being ultra relevant in terms of jujutsu at this level would be what Todo says to Yuji in Goodwill. Todo pretty much directly says when talking about Yuji's divergent fist that the force behind your attack is nothing to scoff at either, or it wouldn't be if you were an average sorcerer. If Yuji was capable of flowing his cursed energy like a normal sorcerer, then he would be far more threatening than his current form right now. And Todo directly says that what he's doing isn't going to be effective when he fights stronger people, and Mahito and Jogo are brought up as an example. And so that doesn't even necessarily imply that physical stats don't matter. They just imply that physical stats don't matter past a certain point. And if you want to fight on this special grade level,
I'll let it cook. But, like, cherry pick of doom and despair, dog. Cherry pick of doom and despair. Don't worry, I'll get into it for a second. I don't want to have to go to the manga again. I'll go to the manga again in a sec. We'll see. Let him cook.
Or the level that Todo is outlining, it takes more than just physical stats, and you need to be able to implement your sorcery with both of those in tandem. Now, Mei in Shibuya also does imply that enhancing your body with cursed energy has a limit, and physical ability in general has a limit.
So you're bringing it up. Never mind. I don't even have to go to the manga.
Imply that enhancing your
physical ability using cursed energy to enhance one body. It's not like it keeps going forever. I was crushed because of that. Because your body has a physical limit point. At least all I'm arguing. I'm not sure what other Sukuna fans are arguing, but at least what I'm arguing is that 35-year-old or 25 to 35-year-old big beefy forearm sorcerer man has a higher physical cap and higher physical base stats than 16-year-old boy. 16-year-old, not even 5'10" boy. Oh, Mario. I think it's enough for just 1 second. 1 second. Even though it should be way more. Because we have Mei bringing up the physical ability and using cursed energy to enhance one body until he keeps removed forever. Meaning that bodies do limit how high you can reinforce yourself. But also we have the Miguel statement. The reason Miguel's so strong is because he has just a stronger physical base than most sorcerers. We have the Yuta versus Yuji statement. The idea of Yuta having a weak physical form but insane amounts of cursed energy to reinforce. Meanwhile, Yuji has lesser amounts of cursed energy but insane physical base to reinforce. That's why they're somewhat comparable at all. Your physical base matters. This series hammers this in 3 times over. And notably, what Todo says doesn't even really relate to a stat limit or stats not mattering after a point. He's like, Yuji, you could be fighting with your stats better if you just sync them up. He doesn't say they're irrelevant. That doesn't even make sense. But let's see.
Body with cursed energy has a limit, and physical ability in general has a limit, which is pretty consistent with people that have, heavenly restrictions and stuff like that, but that's not even the really relevant part. It doesn't even necessarily matter where this limit might be, or even if there's a character saying that physical ability has a limit, because if you want to prove that physical stats don't really matter at the highest level, then really all you need to prove is that cursed energy is additive and not multiplicative like something like Super Saiyan. Cursed energy being additive really matters the most when we're having this debate about reinforcement being exponentially stronger when adding your physical stats. Now, the reason behind that is that if cursed energy and reinforcement together is an additive boost of strength.
Oh, but there's the other panel.
The reason behind that is that if cursed energy and reinforcement.
Literally, it's right here. He compensates for his lack of power with cursed energy reinforcement. Everyone does it, but when he does, you're the exact opposite of me. So, like, the base power clearly matters somewhat. So the more base power you have, and like that's the thing, whether it's additive or multiplicative, having a higher base just means it's going to be stronger, right? So going with the multiplicative idea, obviously 2 times 6 is much bigger than 2 plus 6, but regardless, 3 times 6 is still bigger. Wait, that's a stupid example, but actually no, not really. Let's go with it. 2 times 6 is 12, so that's going to be much bigger than 2 plus 6, which is 8, right? 4 points bigger. But if we're keeping the base, the 2 the same, and we're going to level both up by 1, whether it's additive or multiplicative, 3 times 6 is 18, which is going to be bigger than 3 plus 6, which is 9. But notice how there's still a difference in the end result because the base got bigger, right? So whether cursed energy is additive or multiplicative, changing your physical base, getting more muscle mass, more height, more weight, more you to reinforce, increasing your base number is going to make your resulting number with whatever you think cursed energy is, it's going to be more. There's going to be an increase. There will be a difference. How much that difference matters, I agree, is possibly negligible because we just don't have a solid multiplier. But it's enough for 1 second. Let's see.
Together is an additive boost of strength, then that would mean that eventually, in theory, if your CE reinforcement just reaches this certain point, it would eventually just outweigh how strong your base stats are and they wouldn't really matter. Like, for example, if I had the base stats of 5 joules and my CE reinforcement was another 5 joules, then they would matter pretty much just as much because they would give me a combination of 10 joules. Now, obviously, if it was multiplicative, then it would be 25 joules with the same numbers, and that would be a much bigger boost overall. But then at the same time, if you were to say that your physical ability is only 2 joules, but your CE reinforcement would be like 8, then clearly you can see that one is starting to outweigh the other. Now, CE being additive isn't just an assumption. There are...
But like, you start with the example, but then you don't finish it. If he's right. If your physical is 2 joules and you have 8 joules of CE, then you're going to be 10. But then, if you still have 8 joules of CE, but then your physical goes up to 3, you'll then have 11 joules, which is a difference. So like, and notably, I don't... My fellow Sukuna sloppers, don't slaughter me. Don't slaughter. Look at him. He's handsome, isn't he? He's handsome, isn't he? Actually, he's kind of ugly inside. But I don't think cursed energy is like necessarily multiplicative. I do also mostly think it's additive. That's why more cursed energy matters more, right? Rather than, well, why more cursed energy matters more, and the stat gaps between characters aren't like genuinely insane and out of this world. But all that being said, all that being the case, the most important thing is that there is a difference when your physicals go higher. So if there's a difference, it'll probably make up for 1 second. That's all I need. That's all I need. And that's the thing. It seems like they agree. They agree there is a difference, but they're just trying to say the difference doesn't matter. But when we're talking in intervals of seconds, yeah, a whole extra stat point matters. I'd say it would. Let's see.
See that one is starting to outweigh the other. Now, CE being additive isn't just an assumption. There are actual examples in the series that we have of people talking about CE reinforcement that really make it more consistent than you would.
Let's see. I'll put in all that. It's bottomless. So, full pound plainly pass. Don't make direct contact. Yeah. I mean, this is none of. In fact, none of these have to do with reinforcement. They all have to do with output. Well, actually, no. This one has to do with reinforcement. But don't make direct contact. Yeah. But this is just Glaze My Glorious King Ryu and how they still aren't as bulky as him. So like. But then again, none of these characters have the same thing that Sukuna has, where he literally goes from a weaker body to a stronger one. But let's let them keep cooking.
Probably think. The classic example brought up in that comment section was talking about how Gojo was quote-unquote glazing Miguel for having the best physical stats.
Yeah, the 90% of your knees. On top of that, your bone structure and musculature. You have cursed energy reinforcement. That alone makes you a threat. Yeah, because he's bigger. Because he's bigger. So he's stronger. Like, it's as simple as that. Let's see what they said though.
And they were using that to say that physical ability is crucial and can even make somebody as strong as Miguel, which is completely untrue. Gojo isn't just commenting on Miguel's physical stats, he's also commenting on the fact that his body, and specifically his bone structure, is just different.
But like, look at what Miguel says the panel. This is why they were mad. I was so confused. Okay, so let me deep pull back. The original reason why you're here, well, I'm not sure if you're here, but like the original requester for me to act to these 2 videos kept telling me that bone structure and musculature didn't matter. It's all the same. Thusly, stats are the same. And I was wondering, like, why are you bringing that up? That seems like such a weird argument. Because on top of your different bone structure and musculature, you have cursed energy reinforcement. When Miguel hears that, he specifically responds with, that's a racist stereotype, and not all black men are athletic. I'm not special because I'm black, I'm just me. And then Gojo goes on to immediately apologize for that. So Gojo doesn't say, no, Miguel, I mean, you're like actually biologically, physically different than us, that's why you're stronger. He's just saying, Miguel is bigger than the average Japanese man. Thusly, he's stronger. He has a higher base to reinforce. Plus the Mei statement, plus the Yuta statement. So like, this is a third piece. But even then, if we're going with the idea that different bone structure, and this is the same thing I tried to explain to the person in that comment, if we're going with the idea that different bone structure does matter and does actually help your base, then I would say that Megumi, and notably it's bone structure and musculature. So that person kept arguing that it was just bone structure. I never even went back to the darn skin. It was bone structure and musculature. Even if you want to argue that True Body Heian Sukuna has the exact same bone structure and that his arms are just noodles or made of a like Megumi's rib bone spread out into arms or whatever. He has more muscle mass than Megumi because he's literally bigger. And he literally has more arms. So he has more to reinforce, meaning he's stronger. What is the point of this argument? And why, like... Let me keep going.
And these things lead to Miguel being as strong as he is. Now, that's not even the part of the scan that I'm too concerned with. Pretty much no matter where you translate this page, whether it's through ChatGPT, TCB, or even Viz, they all pretty much imply that when Gojo's talking about adding cursed energy to Miguel's build, he's saying just that, it's adding cursed energy. He says the term on top of in TCB, and then in Viz, it's just pretty much just saying add, which again implies that cursed energy would be additive and not something like multiplicative. If your CE reinforcement and your physical stats mixing together was multiplicative, then I can see how your base physical stats would matter way more, but in the context of JJK, it just doesn't really seem like that's the case.
But once again, with the panel you literally pulled up, it was Yuji versus Yuta. We have the series heavily emphasize that a character like Yuta could be way stronger if he actually had decent physicals in base, but he doesn't. He has to make up for all of that with cursed energy and cursed energy reinforcement. So going back to the original example, Yuta has physicals of like a 2, but has like an 100 in cursed energy, so he gets to be 102. Yuji has physicals of a 60, and then he has cursed energy of a 40, and that's why he gets to like 102 or below 102 for the Yuta example. Physicals matter. Physicals matter. Even if it's just additive, physicals matter. The difference is 1 second. To argue that they are exactly the same would be to deny the series itself. Honestly, like, I get why Jaded and presumably Six are going down this argumentation path, because they kind of just want to explain how the stats don't matter. But they do matter. This series highlights this 3 separate times. And Todo does not say that your physical stats don't matter after a point. He says, Yuji, you're doing it wrong. You should use your physical stats with your cursed energy, not your physical stats separate from your cursed energy. He doesn't say anything about this not mattering at a high level. If anything, it matters even more at a high level. The only reason Akari's at all relevant is because he gets an infinite CE buff on top of his already rather crazy base build. The build matters, even if it's additive. Honestly, even more if it's additive. That means those little extra points would mean more. Obviously not as much as multiplicative, but still, it would mean more. If Megumi is a 5 in terms of physicals and Sukuna is a 6, that 1 point matters for 1 second. Though it's obviously way more than 1, but you get my point. Let's let go.
We also get this diagram from Gojo when he's talking about black flashing, and in this diagram, he just blatantly outlines that there are 3 different types of cursed energy, and specifically the damage that is unleashed when you amplify your strikes with cursed energy, and he divides them up completely. Gojo separates his own physical ability and cursed energy reinforcement completely, and obviously that wouldn't be his own physical ability. Your strikes with
Let's see. For instance, if I load up my fist with cursed energy and throw a punch, that cursed energy is either 1, the type that will strengthen my fist, 2, the type that will crash to my opponent, and 3, the type that will do both. He doesn't separate it. He says it's part of it. The physicals that... So... See, that doesn't... Okay, now Jaded, that doesn't even make sense. You're trying to tell me you think that characters who reinforce themselves with cursed energy aren't actually reinforcing themselves with cursed energy? Gojo separates his cursed energy entirely from his body. He's doing the same thing that Todo told Yuji not to do back in Goodwill? I'm assuming I misheard that, and I'm assuming he doesn't mean that, just because that doesn't make any sense. Characters reinforce themselves with cursed energy. They attack at the same time. What Gojo's describing here is the fusion of the energies, right? There is cursed energy that rotates around his fist, typically blue, with a cursed energy that overflows from his body. Then there's a cursed energy inside his body to reinforce it. Nowhere in this does it imply that the cursed energy is separate from his body, or he's not reinforcing himself when he does his physical hits. But once again, a lot of these, I'm not even chalking up to malice or anything, or like JC is wrong. Jaded's very knowledgeable on JJK. I'm assuming he's just trying to reinforce the no stats point, which I don't think is true. I don't think it's true. And I think if you do think it's true, it's kind of going against what the narrative has implied 3 separate times, one of which using Gojo himself. But regardless, let's let it rock.
cursed energy, and he divides them up completely. Gojo separates his own physical ability and cursed energy reinforcement completely, and obviously that wouldn't be
that, at least that panel doesn't imply that, and that doesn't, like, once again, it doesn't make sense within the context of the series itself. Whatever.
possible if he was talking about something like multiplication when mixing together your base physical stats and cursed energy. A really good example would be Goku going Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball Z. Goku going Super Saiyan is a 50 times multiplier, and obviously when that power is mixed together and multiplied together, you can't really separate the multiplier and Goku's base physical power once he's already transformed. It would be ridiculous and it wouldn't really make any sense. We see that cursed energy is completely separate from your own physical attacks, and that wouldn't be possible if
cursed energy is completely separate from your own physical attacks. And then why is Divergent Fist a thing? You know, the thing that separates cursed energy from Yuji's physical hit? I thought he wasn't going down, but this is the weirdest path of argumentation. So what you're trying to tell me, Jaded, you believe that every single time a character in this universe punches with cursed energy, they aren't actually punching with the power system. That just doesn't happen. What? Like of all, like this easily could have been avoided if he just said, fine, the stat increase is there, but it's negligible and doesn't matter. That would have been better than trying to argue that the characters with the power system aren't using the power system every time they punch and kick, even though it's literally how the power system works. Using the very example of Todo you brought up earlier, you're bringing up the idea that Todo's really bringing up the idea that Yuji's doing it wrong. He should be reinforcing his physical strikes with cursed energy, not punching and then letting his cursed energy flow after the fact. Yuji's cursed energy flow was delayed. Okay.
CE was multiplicative because they would just be combining. If you want to talk about Gojo's statement with
when you add two things together, they're still connected. My cells aren't multiplicative. They're additive. They're all together. They're working together to make my hand function. They aren't separate. They aren't separate. When you add things together, they aren't separate. You need to subtract one thing from the other. Why do you think the heavily restriction users work the way they do? They have no cursed energy at all. That essentially, you mean that what Jada is implying here is that everyone in the universe doesn't actually fight with cursed energy reinforced bodies. What they fight with is heavily restricted bodies that have cursed energy flowing around them? But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because heavily restriction and how it was explained in Dak and the Total, like, this is a weird, but that explains why that argument was so weird in that comment. That just doesn't make sense. I don't know. So far, this isn't it, but let's see.
Miguel also implying an additive boost. If you want to talk about how CE just in general seems to be completely separate and additive, which can't be multiplicative, or even simply if you want to bring up the narrative.
Addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, they are all taking two things that are separate and creating one unified product. Even if two things are added together, they are combined. Just as two things multiplied together are combined, just in a different way. They are not separate. Cursed energy being additive does not change the fact that a character with a stronger physical base will be stronger than a character with a weaker physical base when they both have the same amount of cursed energy. Megana is by proxy weaker than Yuji Kuna because Yuji Kuna has a stronger physical base than Megana, and by proxy, True Body Sukuna, who has a stronger physical base than Megana, is also stronger than, Yuji Kuna and Hei and Body Sukuna are stronger than Megana because they have better physical bases, more musculature, different bone structure. Bada bing, bada boom. Even if it's additive, even if the difference is like 1 point, let's say, sure, it's there. The stats are different. This isn't complicated. Going down this whole idea that cursed energy and physicals are always separate and they never actually link up because adding something together, multiplying something together are different and means they can't coexist when the series itself explains that characters are merged together. The smarter sorcerer uses their CE and their body at the same time, not delaying it like Yuji does. Come on.
Narrative, what seems to be consistent is that cursed energy reinforcement and your physical ability can go hand in hand, but physical ability will start to lose value the higher you go in terms of skill with your CE reinforcement, which is also kind of what
it is. Literally the exact opposite. That's what, like, you realize the whole reason cursed energy reinforcement stat caps are introduced is because you can only reinforce your body up to a certain point at its physical limit. Mei trained to the physical limit and obviously hit the cursed energy. She had a limited amount of cursed energy, meaning she couldn't go any higher, meaning that her physicals mattered. Mei was weaker, got as strong as humanly possible, and then ran out. That's how to resort back to her curse technique. What? Like, am I hearing things? I must be tweaking.
Todo's saying, which was the first point I brought up in the beginning of this discussion. What Todo is saying is that past a certain point, your physical ability isn't going to matter as much as your reinforcement, which again makes sense if CE.
But even if it doesn't matter as much, it matters. There is a stat difference. Once again, it's kind of... I've gone down 50 different analogies. Let's go with another analogy, right? It's like... Here's my water cup. Let's say because water and oil separate. If you leave water and oil together, they will separate. Let's say I fill my water cup up to this much with oil and then up to this much with water. We'll say the water is cursed energy. We'll say the oil is physicals. No matter what, if I increase either of these, if I increase the water, if I increase the cursed energy, the amount of water in my cup is going to go higher. The amount of water, the stat of how much water is in my cup will go higher. So even if I have this much water, this much cursed energy, right? Because Sukuna has the most cursed energy in the entire series outside of Rika. Even if I have this much cursed energy, and I have this little water, I have this much cursed energy, which is the water, and I have this much oil. If I add more oil, the stat is going to rise. There's going to be a difference that is measurable. So yes, no matter what, even if it matters more negligibly, if we go with the idea that cursed energy is additive, which I agree with. Notably, I'm not even disagreeing with Jaded in the idea that cursed energy is additive. I'm disagreeing in the idea that cursed energy and physicals are completely delinked and they never work together at all. And that it doesn't matter at all if someone has a better physical base. Especially considering what he's saying Todo said isn't even what Todo said. Unless I've read the panel wrong that he showed earlier. In fact, let me go all the way back to the initial showing of the Todo panel. Let me go all the way back there to make sure I'm not tweaking. Let's see, this is the main panel. Let me go all here. His thing, he doesn't even show the full Todo. He's using a vertical jab, leading in from the left, leading in from the horse strike. He's a different... No, okay, so this is after Todo explains it. May discipline saying true. The rate of growth of people eclipses those who don't. Then why is your cursed energy relaxed? Hold on, let me see.
Or it wouldn't be if you were an average sorcerer. If Yuji...
What now, my friend? I'll apply cursed energy at the exact moment my strikes hit at full strength.
He was capable of flowing his...
Then why is your cursed energy delayed? Right, he mentions the cursed energy being delayed, aka they're desynced. The additive property is not going in there. Where does this at all imply that physicals don't matter after a certain point? Where's that panel?
Cursed energy like a normal sorcerer, then he would be far more threatening than his current form right now. And Todo directly says that what he's doing is
using a vertical jab.
Gonna be
he's completely different
effective when he fights stronger people, and Mahito and Jogo are brought up as an example. And so that doesn't even...
Okay, so this is I don't like. He doesn't bring up any of those panels he's supposedly talking about. He's saying something Todo said, and who knows, he may have said it. I'm not gonna go back to the manga right now. But since he's making this argument, he should at least show the panels where Todo says that Jogo and Mahito are brought up and how physicals don't matter after a certain point. When the exact opposite is being said. The issue Yuji had is that he wasn't linking his cursed energy and his physicals together. The cursed energy flow was delayed, weakening all of his attacks. But when he added his physicals with his cursed energy, he actually flowed it properly, then, because of the additive property of cursed energy, they were stronger. Implying that the physical base matters to the cursed energy reinforcement. So yeah, this argument, the lowest foundation of the argument, the core of it all, that cursed energy is additive, dap me up, actual factuals, clean, buttery, smooth. I need it like a biscuit right now. The idea that physicals and cursed energy are entirely separated, and no matter how good your physicals are, if your cursed energy amount stays the same, or if it's too big, it doesn't matter at all. That's nonsense. I don't know. So far, that chunk of that has all been nonsense. But let's see, multiplier. In the multiplier versus the plicative thing, like a lot of this just doesn't. It's not tracking. We'll see.
Which is your reinforcement, which again makes sense if CE is additive. So not only is it implied by character and your reinforcement, which is also kind of what Todo's saying, which was the first point I brought up in the beginning of this discussion. What Todo is saying is that past a certain point, your physical...
And see, like, where is he saying any of that? In the panels I've shown on screen. And like, I know I'm blocking the portion. Hi, I'm down here. But nothing he's showing on screen, none of these panels are saying what he's saying Todo said. He's saying this, and it's wrong. By what the series tell you, I'm sounding really mean. He's saying this, but I disagree because the series disagrees. Based on what the manga itself says, none of what he's saying about physicals not having any difference in cursed energy and your physical body not mattering after a certain level. None of that exists, and it doesn't make sense what the series shows us, and it especially doesn't make sense because Todo didn't say that. Camera, focus! Camera! There you go.
Ability isn't going to matter as much as your reinforcement, which again makes sense if CE is additive. So not only is it implied by character interactions and just how we see cursed energy and even the narrative itself, but even logically, it's pretty rational at this point that CE is probably additive and therefore physical ability really doesn't matter all that much, at least at the highest level.
The exact opposite of the narrative shown. I've explained. I'm not going to waste any more time.
Now, Sukuna does get physically stronger when going into his true form. He goes from being in Megumi's body, which would be like a 170-pound guy, to a 9-foot tall. Goes from being in Megumi's body, which would be like a
162 pounds and 5'9". But there's no difference in stats, right? No difference at all? Alright.
70-pound guy to a 9-foot tall 300-pound monster. But even then, I don't think adding another 200 pounds of muscle would really make a difference when we're talking about people who can potentially punch away entire buildings. Sukuna's build is definitely something completely unnatural, but when talking about how strong somebody in theory would be if they had Sukuna's build, it doesn't even compare to how already strong they are. If you were to add the boost of somebody being 9 feet tall and 300 pounds of pure lean muscle onto somebody like Megumi's body, when in context Meguna is already capable of knocking down buildings with just his punches alone, it really does nothing when you're at that level. Don't get me wrong,
there is a difference though. So he's making the argument that it doesn't mean anything. I think the argument's poor. Okay, let me explain why I think the argument's poor. And this is something, oh, I'm so bleeding from my toe. Oh no. But let me explain why I think the argument's poor. We literally see Sukuna face tank a purple that destroyed the small ball and Malevolent Shrine. He tanks that purple, destroyed the small ball and Malevolent Shrine, while he was heavily nerfed already in hand body. Meanwhile, the last unlimited hollow he was hit with, which was, and notably, that either was an unlimited hollow that Yujo accidentally did, or it was a regular hollow purple that Sukuna got hit with. Regardless, since that Gojo should be at full output, he was fully fresh coming into that battle. No brain damage, no nothing. Meanwhile, Sukuna was still brain damage, super giga nerfed, all that. He eats that hollow purple. Once again, no DA. At least from what we can tell. No DA. He doesn't mention it. We don't see it. No DA. But we see Meguna take extreme damage from an unlimited hollow. From a Gojo who buffed it up with chance. So there is actually quite clearly a physical difference in the stats of the body. Because Sukuna is so much bigger, so much stronger, so much more muscle mass. Even when he's heavily nerfed after an entire Black Flash chain stomp from Yuji. Super nerfed. Actually, no. Then before that, Yuji hits the Black Flash, and he digs in Sukuna's heart. Actually, no, he had, no, I think it's afterwards, right? Am I tweaking? I think it's afterwards. It's afterwards. But essentially, he's already giga nerfed by Yuji, right? He's already taken a whole bunch of damage. He's missing a heart. He's missing 3 of his arms. He's really, really down bad. But the hollow purple from what would be a full output Gojo doesn't do anything. Barely does anything. It barely burns his skin. Meanwhile, an unlimited hollow from a Gojo that fully chanted while Sukuna was giga nerfed from the brain damage and all the things he already did in the Gojo vs Sukuna fight takes a whole bunch of damage. What's the difference here? What's the difference between Meguna, who took a lot of damage from a hollow purple, and Sukuna in Heian body that took a decent amount of damage, but like skin tier damage from hollow purple? The difference is their physical forms. And the later Sukuna that took the hollow purple has less cursed energy. Because he's burnt more. He has less cursed energy to reinforce himself with. So even if cursed energy is additive, he has less cursed energy, but he has a much stronger body. Look what that did. He took the hollow purple better. So from what the narrative tells us, what they're saying doesn't even make sense for a stat difference. I get what he means though. Oh, well, you know, it wouldn't make that much of a difference, but no, it would. The series shows us that. And it tells us that time and time again. Shows us that with Yuta, shows us that with Yuji, mentions it with Miguel, brings it up with Mei Mei. Like there's so many different times where the series mentions, oh, your physicals matter a whole lot, by the way. Maki told you you're all physicals. That's why they matter. Okay.
Is a boost, it's just not significant enough to matter in this scale.
I think another thing about this is that people think that Gojo is super physically strong when that's not really the case. Of course, Gojo's punches do a lot of damage, but that's normally because he's using blue to enhance them, and the same with his kicks. Obviously, Gojo is strong without using blue, but he is as strong as he is perceived to be because when he punches and kicks, he uses blue to enhance those strikes.
But did we not read Shibuya together, 6? Jaded. Where we see the man literally rip Jogo apart limb from limb while Jogo's using DA. The same Jogo that face tanked a red, by the way. You know, the higher output of the Limitless? That Jogo was actually dismembered by just cursed energy reinforced Gojo, not a blue amped Gojo. So then, here's the thing. With this belief, with what they're going with right here, then they think that... That's so weird. They think that Gojo would be able to do no damage to Sukuna then. I at least think Gojo would be able to do some damage through DA. It would be minimal, but some damage. But if they think that Gojo without blue is just, you know, like a really tall, strong guy, but not that tall or that strong, then he literally wouldn't be able to damage Sukuna at all, because none of his applications would work. I don't like that. Let's see.
We know that he's strong without blue because Jogo says as much whenever they're down in the train station, that Gojo can do even this much, quote unquote, while just using curse energy and basic martial arts. While it's not that Gojo is weak without his blue and whatever, it's that he's not the strongest without his blue. Miguel's amped up physicals on top of his cursed energy lets him compete with Gojo, who wouldn't be using his curse technique, right? But if Gojo was using his curse technique, obviously he would stomp Miguel out the same way we saw whenever they fought in JJK 0.
So we're acknowledging that the physicals do matter, because the only reason Miguel was able to compete was because he was able to neutralize blue, and he had curse energy on top of his physical base. So what are we talking?
Imagine how bad Gojo was beating up Miguel in JJK 0, the movie. If they were fighting without his technique on, Gojo thinks Miguel would win it first, but he would win in the long run because obviously he has more stamina. It's that much of a difference. There was also some comments about Sukuna.
This is the idea, yeah. But the thing is, Miguel had the rope, which Gojo had to slowly but surely destroy, meaning they were mostly fighting neutrally, but... So we think Miguel's physicals play no part in that. Even though the rope existed to neutralize the Limitless. And Gojo was still beasting on Miguel because Gojo's still just that strong. But he isn't actually that strong. Because okay. Well, let's move on to the next thing. I'm burning way too much time. I was like, bro, you're funny. I never commented on anything but this. One Sukuna was holding back so Raga could adapt. That is true. He was holding back in the fact that he turned DA off. That's the main thing holding back. Bro, legit has Infinity. No wonder he's having fun fighting Sukuna, bro. Did not expect to get cut in half. That's true. He was off guard. It took the whole team plus Gojo using 200% all purple by others, bro. Takes it like nothing, proceeds to act. Sukuna's very smart. Don't doubt that man. I'll get that last point. First one, let's see how they address this.
Holding back so that Maharaga could adapt. And while I do think this is true, I think it's true for different reasons than people would perceive it to be true. I don't think this means that Sukuna was pulling his punches or anything. Sukuna outright says that he doesn't have to fight as hard as Gojo does, specifically because of Maharaga after the domain.
But, I think they mentioned this in the last video too, that's not what Sukuna means here when he says, not as hard as you. He says not as hard as you because he's not putting in as much legitimate effort. He's allowing himself to be thrown around. He's allowing himself to take all this extra damage. He's allowing himself to do all this because he's not trying as hard. Maharaga doesn't do anything in this interaction where he makes this statement. This entire battle up to this point has been Sukuna. Maharaga comes out to pop UV. Why? Because Sukuna was getting knocked around and thrown around for the sake of Maharaga in the UV clash. You see what I mean? Like, let's see.
Clashes are over. When it's saying that Sukuna was holding back or Sukuna didn't give it his all, I think it's talking in terms of all the abilities that he used. If you think about the fight, think about
the main thing he was holding back was using DA 24/7 inside the domain clashes. I agree. I don't really think Sukuna was holding back stats because I don't think he could actually do that much to Gojo physically. Not in Megami's body. Not at all. And barely even in Heian body. I think Gojo's way too bulky for that. But what I do think Sukuna was holding back was using DA 24/7. Because then that would mean Gojo could do nothing. Especially the way they're describing it. If you remove Gojo's technique, the way they're describing it, he's just a dude who's pretty strong. And a dude who's pretty strong isn't beating Sukuna. Even Meguna. Not in 3 minutes. So like, according to your own, like, that's the thing. He's holding back domain amp 24/7. If you just did that, Gojo can't do anything. According to their own logic, by the way. That's not even me. That's not even me. I think Gojo could do something. But like, according to their own logic, Gojo couldn't do anything if he didn't have blue. He's not that physically strong without it. So like, there you go.
everything that Gojo got to use. Gojo got to use purple in a new way. He got to use domain expansion. He used red and blue a ton of times. Obviously, his 6 sides were integral to the fight. His infinity as well. Gojo got to use every single thing at his disposal, but because of Gojo, Sukuna couldn't use specific things. He couldn't use his curse technique throughout most of the fight, couldn't use his domain's ultimate finishing move with the fire arrow, and a lot of the times, he just had Mahara's.
But notably, each time he couldn't use something, it's of its own volition. He did not have to let Malevolent Shrine break. He could have DA'd 24/7 and then built a Fuga. He did not need to stand there and physically engage with Gojo while he's getting hit by cleaves from Malevolent Shrine. He could have just pointed and dismantled at him. He could have used Dismantle on Gojo if he really wanted to. He just didn't. Because he wasn't fighting that hard. Because he was holding back. There are most instances where he couldn't do that. Like, he couldn't, whenever Gojo just had Infinity up and they were fighting, yeah, he couldn't use a Dismantle then. But every time Gojo was burnt out, go see the first 2 times, there's literally a panel, I point out all the time, of Sukuna literally just, like, open mouth staring at Gojo instead of attacking him or anything. He does it, like, twice in the first 2 domain clashes. So, like, yeah, Sukuna's not fighting that hard and he's holding back. Even though he has opportunities to do things that he really could or should do, but he doesn't.
Ultimate finishing move with the fire arrow, and a lot of the times he just had Maharaga out trying to adapt to Gojo just so that he could get the world slash off.
And by a lot of times, the last 3 chapters, I did a whole video talking about it. Sukuna only actively uses Maharaga as like an offensive tool in 233, 230. Is it 233 or is it 232? I think it's 233, 230, 233. 232, 234, 235, because then Maharaga dies in 235. So I think that's the only time Maharaga's actively used as a tool. For a majority of the fight, it's just Sukuna. Like, for over, like, 75% of the fight, it's just Sukuna. And even then, Sukuna needs to play defense for Maharaga, because Gojo could still damage him. Maharaga doesn't actually do much. Dare I say. It was mostly Sukuna and Malevolent Shrine. But let's see.
So Sukuna couldn't give it his all against Gojo the way that Gojo could give it his all against Sukuna. But I don't think that Sukuna was holding back in the sense that he was pulling his punches or not moving as fast as he realistically should be.
And I agree. I think stats-wise, he was going all out as he could as Meguna. Except for the times where he just doesn't fight Gojo for a little bit to let Gojo recover.
Now, another point that was brought up really heavily is that Gojo wouldn't be able to make the unlimited hollow purple to begin with because it would be much harder now that Sukuna has the 4 arms. And we'll get into how relevant the 4 arms are as a whole, and specifically in reference to unlimited hollow purple. We've already spoken about this point a little bit earlier in the video, but there's one thing that I want to bring up, and it's that Gojo obviously had a harder time last time making the unlimited hollow purple, but there's a couple of things that you have to take into account. Gojo's output with RCT was just blatantly nerfed. He couldn't use his RCT to its fullest power. He couldn't even make a red without enchantments, and he couldn't even make a blue, it seems, also without enchantments. And Gojo obviously won't have that problem going into the rematch. Gojo doesn't even necessarily need to chant a blue and chant a red and then chant the purple together. That's only how he made the purple last time for reasons that were probably linked back to certain parts of his output being completely shot after 5 domain expansions. Gojo is going into this fight fresh, and he probably doesn't even need to do half of the things that he did before, except mixing obviously blue and red together to create the unbounded purple. When Gojo describes unlimited...
But that is true. I agree. Blue wouldn't take any time to spawn, but even at the very start of the fight, we see Gojo needs to load up reds. When his output is full, right after the first domain clash, you can't say his output is falling that much, he still needs to load up red. It still takes a second, and if Sukuna's in his face, he won't have that second. And Sukuna knows about it, he'd be wary about it. He'd be in his face. Let's go.
Purple, it's just a purple that's not bound by any target, which means that it's just a purple that isn't condensed or directed in a certain direction. Now, if you take that definition in mind, which is the definition from Gojo himself, then in theory, Gojo doesn't need to chant to achieve that. He just needs to mix a red and blue together. Nowhere in that definition does it say that Gojo needs to perform a certain amount of chants or even hand signs to really complete that. All he needs to do is combine a red and blue together without a bound target, which would just be mixing together a red and blue when he's not aiming at anyone. anywhere, which in general is probably easier than you would think. Gojo has already managed to pull off a red when within Malevolent Shrine when he didn't even have his domain expansion up, and he's already performed 8 blues outside of his own domain expansion, and him being outside of his own domain expansion is very crucial for making this point because obviously when Gojo's within his domain, his curse technique potential not only raises to about 120%, but Gojo himself is just actually physically stronger because of the stat boost given through domain expansion. So if Gojo can perform a red within Malevolent Shrine when Sukuna's stronger, and then he can also perform multiple blues outside, then within the domain expansion when Gojo's only getting stronger, he should be more than capable of doing both, even if he doesn't do them at the same.
But you know what? You know what the funny thing is? At least a weird thing, because we don't know how it would work. But the second Gojo puts up a blue, Sukuna's dismantling it. Remember, Sukuna doesn't need to do motion, and just like they're saying, Gojo doesn't need Chen to do blues. Sukuna doesn't need Chen to do motionless dismantles. This is also a main point. He doesn't actually need to aim. So the second Sukuna senses a red, which he would sense, or senses a blue, he's slashing it in half. And then it's probably not working. Remember, I mean, then again, that was piercing water versus a dismantle. A full output dismantle versus a full output blue, I'm assuming they neutralize and destroy each other. So ultimately, that's another way that Sukuna could stop a unlimited hollow from ever happening. Just keep launching slashes. And considering they're in each other's domains, Sukuna could possibly make a slash spawn from literally anywhere. If he has to do it from himself, like Gojo needs to spawn reds from himself, then sure, he needs to do that. But he can always just keep throwing out slashes and keep destroying or knocking around the blues and making sure that they never happen. So, like, he still has answers to it. But I do agree, he wouldn't need to do a full chant. It wouldn't be as powerful. We know that chants make your techniques more powerful, so it probably wouldn't do as much damage, especially if Sukuna's Diang. So it probably still wouldn't be enough to crack Malevolent Shrine. Definitely not without the chants, because we open up the fight talking about how chants make things more powerful. But even still, it doesn't do that. Gojo accidentally destroys his own barrier. He destroys Small Ball. Then he's cursed techniqueless inside Malevolent Shrine where Sukuna's healing himself. And then Gojo's back in the same scenario again. He needs the domain up again. So, lowering the output of purple, probably not the best idea. But let's see.
Time, which isn't even a condition for making the unlimited purple. I don't know why people say that. All Gojo has to do is make them separately and keep them away from Sukuna.
This is all really just to
And to keep them away from Sukuna, he needs to make sure they don't get hit by any individual slash, which would be very difficult to do, considering Sukuna can fire off slashes without even looking, without even moving, without doing anything. He can release slashes at any number, at any way. He could just, like, legit, you know that net that he threw at Kashimo? He could throw that at every single blue Gojo tries to release. And they'll interact weirdly. They'll probably all break, though. Let's see.
justify our point about the hand-to-hand fight not really being all that different the second time around, even with Sukuna's different body. And like I said in the original video, it wasn't that big of a deal. It got made a big deal, but it wasn't that big of a deal or relevant to the argument. The hand-to-hand fight should go basically the exact same way. And even if Gojo is ever at a disadvantage, he has all the other things we talked about in order to, you know, get out of that disadvantage. Another comment that was left was someone saying that Sukuna can constantly use Hollow Wicker Basket or Domain Amp in order to make sure Infinity's not a problem.
Hollow Wicker Basket is a horrible point. I agree. Shouldn't do that. But Domain Amp is... What were they saying? And this is... The video's almost over, so I know they're not going to address it. The big issue that they do not address is... My brain just blanked. What is it? Because we were talking about... the physical body not mattering. The reason the physical body matters is because they've already conceded that Gojo and Sukuna fight relatively. As long as Sukuna has 2 free hands, he will always have 2 free hands. He'll always have 2 free hands. Another can always hold the unlimited hand sign. Another mouth can always be chanting. And so there's that. So they're still going to be fighting evenly. Gojo's still going to be in a timer if their domain clashing. And that's the reason why I say the physical body matters, even though they keep saying it doesn't. Because they aren't acknowledging the fact that Gojo only has 3 minutes, and the fact that every single clash previously went down to the last second. If the body difference is 1 point, 2 point, 3.4, how many body points are different in my store? Sukuna can last that extra 1 second he needs to against Gojo while domain amping 24/7, and Gojo dies eventually, as long as he keeps the main clashing. He needs to run. So like that's why it matters. They say it doesn't matter, but it matters because it literally makes that 1 second difference that allows Sukuna to win the battle. That's why it matters, at least in my opinion. I don't know, but let's see.
Hollow Wicker Basket doesn't disable curse techniques. It stops domain barriers from targeting you.
Yes.
You can still be hit by curse techniques with Hollow Wicker Basket up. Yuta hit Sukuna with every curse technique he ever hit him with was while Hollow Wicker Basket was up, except for Jacob's Ladder, of course. Sukuna having Hollow Wicker Basket doesn't matter in his fight.
Let me give him this. This isn't a point. I don't know why that commenter was talking about Hollow Wicker Basket. They're confusing that with Symbol Domain because it shut down Mahito's technique and was able to do damage to his soul. And Symbol Domain softening Sukuna's techniques. Hollow Wicker Basket and Symbol Domain, similar, very different though. Let's see.
Fight with Gojo in order to get past Infinity. Now, obviously, domain amplification will matter. It's just when Sukuna's using domain amplification, he can't use any curse techniques. So yeah, he can start fighting with Gojo, but Gojo can use all his curse techniques to throw him around or however you want.
And see, that's the other thing. I don't know what is complicated about the simple idea that if domain amp is on, none of Gojo's abilities work on Sukuna. It is that simple. Their output is relative. Gojo even mentions his output ramping up when domain is up. And we know DA never reached his full output because if it ever did, then Maharaga would have been turned off. We know Maharaga was never turned off. He was always in the shadow. So yes, DA does matter because if it's on, none of Gojo's abilities work on Sukuna. And if none of Gojo's abilities work on Sukuna, according to their own admission, Gojo can't do any damage to Sukuna, meaning he'll never break the domain. So this is how they address it, by saying it doesn't matter, even though that is the crux to the entire thing. Let's see.
Like the beginning of chapter 224, when Sukuna was essentially on the run the entire time, while Gojo was just using his curse technique and he was using amplification. So the comment...
He was not using amplifications throughout the entire battle. He used amplification, in fact, after the interaction they're talking about. He went in with no amplification for some reason, but then, very specifically, when they go into the building, we see Sukuna turn on amplification. It clashes with Infinity for a little bit. Then it reaches. He goes through Infinity. They go through the building. Then Sukuna turns DA off. Every single time Sukuna turns on DA, we see it or we know it, or it's stated. Very specifically, he's not using it there because he can't fully turn it on for an extended period of time because of Maharaga being in the shadows. Okay.
Is really nonsensical. Hollow Wicker Basket won't work in this context. Domain amp just puts Sukuna at a big disadvantage.
It puts him at a big disadvantage outside the domain. In a domain clash, it's literally the key to victory. Because it helps him last that extra 1 second. Especially with True Body. Alright.
This thing would just be how much damage Sukuna would actually take from Unlimited Purple or something along those lines whenever he does use domain amplification, since he has access to it this time. And I don't really think the difference would be all that great. Obviously, domain amplification limits how much damage you're going to take, but Sukuna still took a pretty significant amount of damage from Red before it even exploded whenever he used domain amplification before. And if you look at
that's okay. Once again, it was burn marks. I'll agree. But not only could he not turn on DA all the way because he had Maharaga on, one of the big points about switching between techniques is that you need to have DA almost up to full, but you can't fully turn it on or also shut down your technique. So we know that wasn't a full output DA. He pulled that out at the last second. He didn't have it on 24/7. So he had to pull it out at the last second, and then it still managed to soften Red. And on top of that, stronger body, no DA Sukuna, while nerfed, takes purple later. Unlimited hollow purple, whatever you think it was. He takes that. Just fine, no DA. DA would soften it enough that his domain would survive. And he would survive. It's as simple as that. Like his hand, like, essentially, think of what would have happened if Sukuna used DA when Unlimited Hollow hit him. Remember, post-Unlimited Hollow, he was in bad shape, but he still was still mostly intact. He lost a hand, and I think his foot, and in 2 of his eyes. If he had DA on in that moment, he would have both of his eyes, he'd still have his hand, he'd be fine. He'd be fine enough that his domain would be maintained, essentially. And notably, he was right next to purple when that happened. He was right next to full output hollow purple while his output was already nerfed, and he just face tanked it and lived. So, like, yes, DA will make enough of a difference. It'll keep him alive for that extra second that he needs to shut down Gojo's domain. We've been through this.
The difference between him and Gojo with Unlimited Purple, the difference is night and day. I mean, Sukuna's...
But, like, here we go. Here's the panel right here. Still has a hand. Looks like he still has both feet. He lost that hand and lost half of his face. It looks like he got hit on this side mostly. And he still has both feet. So if he has DA here, especially a full output DA, because remember his output was nerfed. Meanwhile, Hollow Purple was at least full chanted up to full strength. He would still have a hand. He would essentially, it'd be the same thing that happened with Red. He'd be burned, but he'd be fine. He'd be fine enough that his domain wouldn't break. He's not dismembered here. He doesn't have a gaping hole in his chest. He doesn't have a gaping hole in his face. He'd be fine. Not fine. Once again, I keep saying fine. But he'd tank it enough that his domain wouldn't shatter. And then Gojo would die. Because his domain would shatter. And then he'd be encouraged to burn out and be forced to refresh and do it all over again. So, yeah, neither of these videos convince me.
Missing an arm, he's burned all over, he's missing
a hand, not missing an arm.
2 eyes on his left side. The difference is too night and day to just say that.
In fact, look at the damage Gojo took. While he was softened, he also seemingly lost an eye, was burnt a decent amount. Like, this is the nerf damage that Gojo was taking because it was his own cursed energy. And even he still took crazy amounts of damage. Meanwhile, Sukuna, who had no nerfs on him, took the only extra damage that he took was losing his hand. Think about that. Other than that, mostly intact and losing more of his shirt. But that's it. Outside of that, they took relatively similar amounts of damage. And that was with no DA. So DA plus a stronger physical form, he's eating that. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack on the side. All right, let's see.
Domain amplification is going to completely make up this difference, especially when Gojo says, hey, you know, Sukuna might be able to negate blue and limitless because they're relatively low output, but he can't completely negate red. And like I said, that was before red had even exploded yet. And Sukuna does say if Gojo were to land a purple basically point blank at him.
20% coming out. I got away with it, just losing 2 reinforced. Oh, really? He says hands? I thought he lost his arms. Oh, that's even worse. That's even worse. He only lost his hands when he took that. I thought he lost his arms. Oh, I kind of want to see what this says. I forget, what does it say? No, I need you out of the way. I need you out of the way. It's not getting out of the way. It's not getting out of the way. All right. Hold
on. He would just die.
Does he say that though? Does he say that though? You know what? We've been here for long enough, and we've been here for long enough. I got time. I got time right now. I got time right now. Hold on. Let me go to the panel because I literally can't see it on screen. Let me go to the panel. Sorry, I'm scrolling on a completely different screen. Maybe like wondering, hey, Pencilman, what are you doing right now? I am currently hunting like a fiend. Neither of us is at full strength. If he lands a hit with purple at this distance, even at just 100%, it'll be fatal. Okay, so he does say he'll die. If he lands us at neither of us is at full strength. If he lands a hit with purple at this distance, even just 100%. If he lands the hit, and he doesn't say with DA, he says it'll be fatal. And does fatal automatically mean death? And now I'm getting extra semantic. Hold on, let me pull up the Googler. Look up. Oh nope, fatal just means death. All right, so he admits he died of full output purple at this point after his technique is super duper nerfed, or not after his technique is super duper nerfed, after he himself is super duper nerfed. So ultimately, I mean, let me play out these last 8 seconds.
Granted, Sukuna's not at full power there, but yeah. You know, he said he would just die.
Have a happy new year.
Okay, so verdict. After watching both of the videos, they didn't present because the main thing is I don't think they didn't, at least I'm not sure what the core argument is. I think a lot of people lean heavily into the world slash. I'm not a world slash kind of guy. I'm more of a, you know, I dabble in the world slash here and there. You get creative with it. Me personally, I'm the kind of guy who likes to lean to the DA on 24/7, stopping Gojo forever pulling off purple, domain clash, GG route. Because ultimately, Gojo's only win con is spamming techniques from long range, which he wouldn't really do in character. They'd be domain clashing. And ultimately, with a better physical base and DA on 24/7, Gojo's never doing enough damage to actually collapse his domain. He burns through all 5 of his uses of domain in small ball because he wouldn't leave the domain area, and he loses. That argument was just not addressed here. They spent time talking about Hollow Wicker Basket, but I don't blame him because that commenter brought it up, and apparently that comment was pretty popular, so I don't blame him for addressing Hollow Wicker Basket. But that's not the crux of the argument. That person just didn't read the manga. They didn't read the manga. But very specifically, DA plus MS plus better physical form equals 1 second. Equals 1 second. If I can get, no, because it's really 2 things. If I can get 24/7 DA plus 1 extra stat point to physicals, he can last 1 second longer. Because every single clash went down to the last second. Except for the last one, where Sukuna was lagged because he took damage in the previous clashes. If he can't take any damage, as they themselves admit, Gojo can't do any real damage physically without blue, and can't do anything without purple, damage-wise to Sukuna, which they admit throughout this video. If he keeps DA on 24/7 inside the domain clash, he runs Gojo's 3 minutes out, and he kills him after 5 rotations, even in a rematch. And obviously, he has a World Slash, one of the different ways that Sukuna could sneak in a World Slash. It's wraps. Personally, they didn't convince me. And I think, and not even that their argument for Gojo was poor, they bring up an interesting argument that I think in different contexts would work. I think if they got out of the domain scenario, if Six and Jaded had just said, if Gojo avoids the domain scenario to not put himself on a timer and simply spam Sukuna down with unlimited hollows from a range that Sukuna cannot compete with, then I'm dapping him. I'm like, yeah, buddy. Yeah, but like I can rock with that. But since they didn't do that, since they said they're going to be domain clashing, but did not acknowledge. They acknowledged the stat difference, but then said it wouldn't matter. They acknowledged GA, but then said it wouldn't matter. They acknowledge the timer, but then said it wouldn't matter. Because supposedly Gojo just was doing overflowing amounts of damage to Sukuna, so it wouldn't even matter. They acknowledge that World Slash is complicated, but then proceed to downplay the complexity of pulling off any sort of purple at all. So like, they acknowledge it, but they don't really address it. And I think that's the main issue. But overall, still a fantastic video, still fantastic editing, still fantastic content creators, and still, overall, a worthy video. I just disagree with it. And that's fine. Notably, I feel like I have to say this all the time. Just because I disagree with another content creator doesn't mean either A, they're a bad content creator, or C, that I'm right. I'm just a guy doing guy things and yapping for way too long. This video's probably still 2 hours. So like, don't worry. Just because I disagree does not mean they are wrong. Or that I'm right, or anything like that. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with my arguments, or do you guys think I'm dumb, stupid, and crazy, and I should just listen to them? Let me know. Or do you have some other angle? Do you guys agree with anything I said? Do you disagree? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave matchup of the future. Matchup of the future in the comment section down below. I did thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that notifications so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, so you can have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Of course, this is all on That Guy with the Pencil, the main channel. This one, presumably at the time of this, will not be like anywhere near able to get memberships on it, but that is the thing. Over on the main channel, you can go do that. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is That Guy with a Reaction. Cutting off.